at the end of time.
O'clock. Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Wednesday once again, and here we are with another show.
Yep.
This one, yeah, this should actually be like pretty entertaining. I think Tom will have a lot of fun with this one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We are talking about the sometimes called Genghis Khan, but sometimes called Genghis Khan.
Yeah, and that wasn't his name.
That was not his name. That's actually a title. Well, I was wondering about that because it's like, as far as I could remember, like everyone had just called him Genghis Khan. And even though and I watched a bunch of documentaries saying they almost all pronounced it like that. But apparently, historians are now kind of like, well, technically, that's kind of the anglicized version.
Right, Genghis.
Genghis is kind of closer to what would have been the Mongolian pronunciation. Yeah. But like I said, that's not his name. That's a title.
Yeah, his real name was Temujin.
Yeah, Temujin was his actual name. That's what he was born with.
And I think he had more than one name, too.
That's mostly, I've just seen, like, Temujin is what his name is. But, and he actually didn't get the title of Genghis Khan until 1206.
I seem to remember that Temujin was more like a nickname.
I don't know. We'll get into that.
He got that name later. I don't remember.
No, that's what he was born as.
Okay.
As far as that, okay, so here's the thing.
Yeah.
Now, this was obviously a very long time ago. Most of the stuff that they know about Genghis Khan nowadays pretty much mostly comes from one book, which was published about 12, 13 years after he died. So they're not entirely sure like how accurate it is. There are like some later accounts like from Chinese sources and Arab sources that kind of say more or less the same thing, but no one's entirely sure because, you know, he didn't write anything down. Like, the people around him didn't write anything down. So a lot of the stuff was kind of maybe secondhand information or, you know, information for people who encountered him in some way. But that's where most of the information about him comes from, is from this one book, which was published in about 1240. And they're not entirely sure who wrote it either. It's called The Secret History of the Mongols.
The more you look into ancient history books or the books that ancients wrote, the less you can really rely on them. That even includes, like, you know, Josephus and Suetonius, you know, fucking the Roman writers. They kind of added their own fucking flair to everything that they wrote.
Of course.
You know?
I mean, everyone has their own biases and their own take on things.
They'd add little stories and shit. You know what I mean? Like, where the fuck did this story come from? You know, how does he know this? It's just some bullshit he heard. Sounded good. He put it in.
Yeah. My mom's aunt's cousin's friend at the salon said that blah blah blah. Then they just wrote it down in the book like it really happened.
So it wasn't history as we know it today. It wasn't modern history where things were like documented. It was legends and some things that they got right, and they knew the dates, you know, when certain things happened. Other stuff, there's no real date given. Anything in Roman history, like, you know, you read one take on Caligula, they'll say that he killed his sister, you know, that he was like sleeping with. Another version will say no, that she died. He didn't kill her. He was in love with her, you know, but they weren't sleeping together. So you never really, everything was kind of like spun into propaganda. So when you're dealing with somebody like Temujin or Genghis Khan, I'd probably go with the oldest sources.
Yeah.
Because the later sources were probably just somebody read the old source and then threw his spin on it.
Yeah, and you have to think that Genghis Khan, while undoubtedly a ruthless conqueror, he's going to be seen differently from the people that were on his side and the people that he conquered. Obviously, that's true of pretty much everything.
Well, books were big business. It wasn't like you just buy a $3 book back then.
Yeah.
Only a rich man could afford a book. They were big, illustrated, and they were just worth a lot of money, hand illustrated.
Yeah, only rich people had them.
Rich people had them. They had jewels encrusted on them and shit. And that was their version of a huge Hollywood movie.
I love those old books. They're so beautiful.
Yeah, that only you could watch. You know. So if you're selling a book to a nobleman or a group of noblemen, your shit's got to be different than the other book. It's like, yeah, I know you guys had that book on Genghis Khan, but I got a better one. And new information came out.
I'm going to make up all kind of fun shit.
Yeah, he might add some stuff,
Make it a little more salacious.
Or, get
a little more exciting.
Yeah, or he might go to the areas or talk to guys that have been to that areas and bring them back rumors. And then the rumors get rewritten and incorporated into it.
Well, that's what, pretty much every documentary that I watched about him and everything that I read about him, because I went through, all the World Encyclopedia, Encyclopedia Britannica, Wikipedia, I went through all that, and all of them had slightly different facts, not super, super different. There is kind of a rough consensus, I guess, on what probably happened, but a lot of the stuff did say, it's look, it's pretty much all comes from this one book. It was written after he died, not long after he died, but, after he died. So it's we're not entirely sure, how accurate this is. So, take it with a grain of salt. You have to think, too, that in modern-day Mongolia, he's essentially seen as a hero because he's, seen as, the father of Mongolia. Which, yeah, it's he's a really, I wanted to say, what the fuck? Okay, Doctor Strange from Dollar General is in the chat. Okay. Yeah. He sent me a list today of a bunch of movies on Tubi. Okay. I had actually probably seen 70% of those, but there was a bunch of those that I hadn't seen too. So I wrote down all the ones that I hadn't seen, so I'm gonna watch those. But some of them I had seen.
Yeah, I saw him today.
But that was a good list.
Went down the store and he's walking us. What's up, bitch? He laughed.
Yeah, that's what he emailed me and told me. He's like, oh, my nickname is bitch now. No. Yeah, because that's what he said. He said, hey, it's bitch from Dollar General.
Yeah, I was fucking with it. Yeah, he was working, so I knew he couldn't say anything.
Well, yeah.
He's like, what? He's gonna fuck you, bitch. You're gonna go. I'm gonna tell you.
You're so mean. You're so mean, Tom.
Yeah, I'm just fucking with him. What's up, bitch?
Yeah, I saw him yesterday because I went over there to get some cat treats. Some cat treats and some coffee creamer.
Yeah.
But yeah, so CB was saying earlier, he said, I have a feeling Khan was even more batshit than we knew. I don't think he was batshit. He's a really interesting historical character. Sure, he did some really horrible, ruthless, monstrous things. No one's denying that. But I don't think he was crazy.
He was a man of his time.
He usually did it for strategic purposes, usually for psychological warfare.
Yeah.
The shit that he did. And honestly, by all accounts, he was actually very shrewd and very intelligent. And the weird thing about it is that he also introduced a lot of stuff into the Mongol Empire that really wouldn't kind of catch on in Europe until a lot later, religious tolerance and shit like that. So it was kind of weird. He was a little bit progressive in his day. But then on the other hand, he was also a kind of a huge mass murderer. Yeah. They think that no one's entirely sure how many people he and his armies killed. Okay, nobody knows. Conservative estimate, 37 million.
That's big, especially for the population.
But I've seen as high as 60 million, but that might be an exaggeration.
That's a significant proportion of the Earth's population in the.
It was about 11%.
Yeah.
10-11% of the population of the world at the time.
Yeah.
They think that maybe him and his, not just him, obviously, but him and his armies. Because you had to think, he had masses of armies, and they occupied a massive territory. Mm-hmm. And they were just sacking and pillaging and raiding and shit like that, pretty much all the time for, years and years. So, it sounds like a lot, but when you kind of sit down and think about it, it's what? Maybe not. You know what I mean? Yeah. Maybe it is that many. But like I said, most conservative estimate I've seen was 37 million.
People don't realize how many Russians were killed in World War II.
Well, yeah, that too.
Their casualties were just astronomical. They just dwarf everybody else's casualties.
Yeah,
So we just blow that off, man. Fucking, it was in the millions. I think it was fucking 60 million, 50 million.
Yeah, it's really
like that. 50
crazy to
million
like
Russians
think.
are
I mean,
killed.
that's a lot of fucking people. That's a lot of fucking people.
Yeah.
There has been, I have heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard that Genghis Khan and his armies killed so many people that it actually caused a significant decrease in like CO2 emissions or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
Like they could actually see it, like when they went back and did like core samples or whatever.
Yeah, but because they were all,
because he killed so many people.
And people burned campfires every day.
Yeah, so so they think maybe that's why.
Yeah.
But because they're like, well, what was going on at that time? And they're like, oh, you know what I mean? That's probably what that was. Like he killed so many people that, and another thing too is that despite him killing all these people, he actually did. I mean, he very clearly like opened up, trade routes between East and West, which hadn't really been all that prevalent before.
Yeah.
Like because the Mongol Empire, now it didn't even get at its biggest under him. Like it actually got biggest under his son, like after he had died, and then his grandson too, like kept going. It kind of started falling apart like a couple generations later. He did keep the shit organized kind of like while he was alive, but
I seem to remember that China, that what we would call China today, and the Roman Empire knew about each other.
Yeah.
There's some Chinese writings that describe the Roman Empire, and they were astounded that their king was elected.
Yeah.
They were talking about the Republic period.
Right.
And then when his time was up, he stepped down. The Chinese thought that was just unheard of, like silly.
Yeah.
He stepped down and became a normal person. They're like, what?
That's so silly.
And I seem to remember that they did confirm that their coins, they found some coins that would have, from the period of ancient Rome, and that they think are Chinese. So they think they're Chinese coins. So there was trade. I don't know what. The Romans claimed that they had exotic female slaves from all over the world. They wouldn't have called Germans exotic. They were nearby, and they were used to seeing Africans. I think they might have been talking about Chinese.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that at its height, the Mongol Empire was bigger than Africa, the entire continent of Africa. And bigger than, what was it, like twice as big as the United States or something like that. Like I saw somebody like making like all these comparisons. It was fucking massive. Like I said, at the time, I believe under his son, it got to its peak. It was a fifth of the world.
Yeah.
So it was like the largest, by size anyway, like the largest empire ever, like in history. And interestingly, I was telling Tom this before we started, a lot of your other famous conquerors, Alexander the Great and whatnot, like a lot of them had like kind of a different background. Like some of them came from aristocratic backgrounds or, had a leg up at least. But Genghis Khan didn't really have that. Like he kind of came from nothing really. Like they just kind of lived out on, they was just nomadic people that lived out on these steppes or whatever. And he went on to conquer a fifth of the world, which is fucking crazy.
Yeah. That means he was highly successful.
Yeah,
and an important person in history, a key player.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, like a lot of the documentaries that I saw, they made the argument that he's like he might be the most important person in history, just because of the impact that he had, like on the way shit was. But
he's not Western, so we don't focus on him much.
Yeah, it's like I remember learning about him in school, but like I said, in school they do world history, but world history classes, at least when I was in high school in the 80s, was mostly European history. Like they would kind of be like, yeah, here's some African history, here's some Asian history, but it was just like hardly anything. It was almost all European history.
Yeah, because it was the education was aimed for a Western audience.
Yeah,
the stuff that you knew. What they were talking about, stuff you had to deal with.
Yeah, I mean later on,
China, we were kids, it was closed off.
Yeah, I mean later on, like obviously you could take college classes in specific regions of history if you wanted to, but they didn't really offer that in high school. They were just
when
trying
I
to
was
give
a
you...
kid, we didn't even know what the capital of China was.
Yeah.
We called it Peking. Peking.
Yeah.
And we didn't know that it was called Beijing.
Well, it used to be called Peking.
Yeah, but in the 70s, when I was a kid, we still called it Peking.
Yeah. I'm not sure when they changed it, but it was
A long time
definitely
before that.
definitely changed by the 70s. But I remember writing about a crime that happened there. I think in the 20s or 30s, and it was still called Peking then.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it changed at some point. I don't really remember. SideQuest here said it's basically the history of Europe and colonialism and the British Empire. Yeah, I mean, essentially. Like I said, I do remember them kind of half-assedly, like talking about some Asian shit that was important. I think they did talk about Genghis Khan a little bit because that's kind of significant. And that kind of bled over into Eastern Europe a little bit, at least, or the Middle East.
Yeah, the history we were taught was all basically Anglo-centric. The English-speaking world.
Yeah.
They didn't even talk much about the fucking Spanish Empire. And they kicked the English's ass when it came to fucking taking ground. They took all of fucking Central and South America.
Yeah, it's so weird. It just seems like a whole history of just like fucking white people.
Well, the Spanish
are white, but I mean...
Spanish are white too, yeah.
English-speaking people.
The English-speaking ones, yeah. They were the focus when we were kids.
And like I said, I was in high school in the late 80s. You were too, mid to late 80s.
The UK, United States, Australia, New Zealand, English-speaking world, they were big players.
Yeah. Yeah, no one's saying that.
Yeah.
It's just
Central and South America weren't... Well, Argentina was doing great all the way up until the 70s. They were richer than the United States. So was Venezuela. Their per capita income was fucking high up until fairly recently. Like in the 80s, I think they started to go under. They can't manage an economy. Faulty thinking. Instead of they just keep dividing the pie. The kind of communist thinking. They don't make pie. They just have a pie and they divide it. If you want to give pie to everybody, you got to make more fucking pie. They don't like to make anything. They just like free shit, and all the people that like to work left. But that's a generalization. But Brazil's like that too, and I grew up there. So I don't know. I think it might have had something to do with being a Catholics. There's something about Catholic countries are just real laid back, that's cool. Just they're not real industrial. The Protestants are industrial. They fucking work. I think it's a Protestant work ethic.
I mean, to an almost pathological degree, really.
Workaholics.
They'll work themselves to death, which that's not good either. You need to like kind of hit a happy medium, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tammy said, I've learned more from watching the History, Discovery, and various other channels than I did in school. Yeah, I mean, and I kind of got into, I haven't, read anything on that for a while, but it's like I kind of got into like a whole like weird history thing for a long time, so I read a whole bunch of books about just a bunch of different random shit. It's sad how, I don't know how they teach history nowadays, but it's just like, I'm sure it's probably more interesting than it was when I was a kid.
I think it's strict.
Where they just kind of teach you like, this happened on this date and this happened on that date, and they just kind of like test you on it, and it's like, they don't really give you the context behind things, or they don't tell you the interesting shit,
Yeah, it's my understanding that in public schools, in most states, it's just, history's been stripped down to nothing. It's just real dumbed down.
Rote.
Done. Yeah, real done.
Well, I think that kind of happened a few years back because they're trying to like teach to that, test, the ACT or whatever the fuck
they,
it is.
They don't even talk about World War II. They don't even know anything about World War I or World War II.
CB said at school, I thought Germany was the only one to commit war crimes during the war and learned about the Japanese war crimes because of the History Channel. Yeah, they didn't really...
Japanese were worse. They just wanted to admit
it. was in a lot of ways, it was. Yeah. I mean,
weird.
It's kind of like... I don't even know if I want to say, because it's like all bad.
Oh, yeah.
It's all fucking terrible. So it's just kind of like, oh, this one was worse than that one. That doesn't mean that like what Germany did was okay. I'm just saying that it's,
The German thing, man, with the Holocaust and everything, the only thing that's been going on since the beginning of mankind, just wiping out enemies based on where they come from.
As we will talk about on this show.
Rome did that to Carthage. They did it to all kinds of... they did it to whole city-states. The thing with the Germans is that it was on an industrial scale.
Which had really never been seen
done
before.
On an industrial scale, using industrial technology.
Yeah.
and early computers made by the fucking Thomas Watson, an American guy, trying to keep track of all these fucking prisoners. That's what all that tattooing on the arms was. There was computer data, very primitive computer data. I think it was the beginnings of vacuum tubes and shit like that to calculate fucking numbers. And the Germans were meticulous. And it was like bio-warfare and genetic warfare, and it was race war, industrial race war.
Yeah.
Which has never been done before. And that's why it's remembered so much. But now they could do that secretly now, using industries. And, you know, very slow acting fucking things that kill you and shit. That's how they would do it now. The one thing about the Germans is that they were upfront. They were pretty honest about
Well, I guess they thought what they were doing wasn't bad.
No, yeah, they said, but yeah, of course. You can't do that unless you think...
Because otherwise they would have, like, kept that real fucking secret.
Yeah, well, they thought that was virtue signaling, man. They were getting rid of evil.
And the rest of the world is like, what? No.
Yeah.
No.
They're like, no.
What are you doing?
Well, they were against communists and capitalists. All right, and from their point of view, the Jews were the masters of communism because, you know, Karl Marx wrote all that, and the Bolsheviks were Jews, rebelled against the Russian Tsar, and then they were also the masters of capitalism, and they stuck together. They had their own culture, so they couldn't integrate. If the Germans believed that they could not integrate into a national socialist civilization based on Germans. It says, oh, well, they only care about themselves. They're not altruistic like us. That was the thinking. They're capitalists, or
they threw people in gas.
They're not altruistic like us.
We're super altruistic. Get in that gas.
Yeah. So they're going to only care about themselves. And they would be like, you know, but you see, we're good people. We're
people
pure.
Tell themselves some real fantastic shit.
To this day, they go,
no shit.
Those fuckers are dirty. They're like a disease, and if you let them into the German body of people, they'll just fucking use Marxism to get us to all kill each other, and so they just killed them. Well, they didn't tell everybody they were killing them. They denied them citizenship, and then they worked them in ghettos. And then when they started to lose the war, they didn't have enough food to feed everybody, and they go, well, these Jews got to go. So then they made death camps, and they legally justified it as euthanasia because, well, they were going to starve to death anyway. But still, man, they were cruel as fuck, man, in those camps. Like Belsen, you think what happened in Bergen-Belsen? Fucking, that's another story. But we ought to do a story about some of those girls that ran the prison guards. What they did at Bergen-Belsen.
Yeah, that might be
some fucking wild
a nice,
shit.
Depressing show.
Yeah, they hanged them. They hanged all the prison guards, female prison guards.
Yeah, well, I'm just gonna write that down just in case.
They were all in their early 20s, and they thought they were doing a good job. They were just following.
Well, like I said,
I'm just following orders.
Like I said,
you know,
if you think you're doing the right thing, I mean, not always, but if someone can convince you that you're doing the right thing, then they can make you do like all kind of fucked up shit.
Yeah, and be very evil.
You know, which is kind of a weakness that humans have, obviously.
Yeah, it was the Milgram experiment. Shit like that. Fucking people will do what authority tells them to do. A lot of people will. Especially if they're young. Which a lot of the Nazis were young.
I think the only Nazi adjacent show that we've done was about all the occult shit they were into.
Yeah.
I think that's the only one we've done.
Yeah, but it wasn't that much occult stuff. Most of it was
that, and like that dude, that French dude that we just talked about, a couple of that serial killer, which was only like slightly Nazi adjacent. It wasn't really like.
So this is not totally off topic because Genghis Khan and his guys and the Nazis were both conquering civilizations.
Yeah, you know, I mean Genghis Khan was doing it for different reasons.
Yeah.
He wasn't, and the weird thing about it is he wasn't really trying to wipe out. He was just trying to conquer territory. He didn't really give a shit. And honestly, like I said, from everything that I read about him, he was actually like pretty chill with, like, he didn't hate people of different religions or races or nothing like that. He was actually pretty cool with, like, if you had some cool technology that they didn't have, he was all about that. He was like, ooh, like, how does that work? You know what I mean? So he was kind of weirdly open-minded in that way. And even in the empire that he established, like, you could be different religions. Like, no one was going to shit on you or, like, nobody cared. And which is kind of strange, like, considering... like I said, I kind of feel like he just conquered for the sake of conquering. I don't think that he was doing it.
You're trying to build an empire
for ethnic cleansing reasons or anything like that. He was just trying to be a powerful warlord, and he wanted as much shit as he could get. I don't think he really gave a crap about, wiping out people. Now, he did wipe out a few civilizations, but
there had to been a motive. There had to have been something strategic.
Yeah, but like I said, it was just because it was almost like weirdly practical.
Yeah.
Like, it really didn't have anything to do personally with those people, whoever they happened to be. It was just like, hey, I wanted this land and you were just in the way.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? It was just that kind of shit. He just wanted more shit.
Me and Jen watch fucking Fury Road, and then we got Furiosa recently. Watched that one too. And what's funny about that is that, Immortan Joe and all those guys that, that ran the Bullet Farm and Gas Town and everything, they're very much like guys from this era. And in the movies, they're actually showing them that they're trying to bring back a renaissance. They know how to paint. And so not only are they these fucking warlords, they were also thought they were doing something good. They were trying to bring beauty back into the world and stuff and try to restore humans. Get rid of they weren't trying to get rid of all the fucking mutants and everything. It's just they thought the mutants were the past. They wanted a future with healthy people and shit. So, you could probably say Genghis Khan was a guy kind of like that.
Although I will note that from everything that I read, I don't think that Genghis Khan could read.
That doesn't matter, though.
And he...
Most dudes couldn't.
He seemed kind of interested in it, but like I said, I think a lot of the civilizations that he conquered thought of them as just these savages, which I guess you would, because like all these dudes come riding in on horseback and just like kill all your fucking people, like 10, 20,000
Well, evidently wasn't stupid, though.
At a time. No, he absolutely was not.
He'd see something that was valuable and he goes, oh, that's awesome. Oh yeah, we got to protect that.
Yeah.
You guys can make that? Okay, well, you guys are great.
Well, he did, one thing he did do, when he kind of rolled into a place, was if they had like some artisans there or some people that knew how to like make cool shit that they didn't know, like he would take those people and make them work for him. He'd kill everybody else, but he, that's not great. But he did recognize, like I said, he recognized he would take technology from other cultures that he took over. Like he wasn't, because the thing about it is like sometimes you get like these real like megalomaniac kind of leaders that are just kind of like, I know what I'm doing and I'm always right, and like they won't listen to anybody else. And by all accounts, he was not like that. He would actually like listen to advice even from like his wife or his mom or something like that. Like he'd be like, what do you think I should do or something, and he would actually listen to that and like take their thoughts under advisement, which I thought was kind of interesting, because usually dudes like that will not do that.
Yeah, that's another thing going back. It's well documented even in Roman histories and Greek histories that women may have not have had like official positions of power, but they had a lot of power. Women had a lot more power than people think they did, especially if you were the wife of an empress or a senator or whatever. A lot of times they'd listen to their wives. So it wasn't official power, but they had a lot of unofficial power.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, not a lot. There was some shit, we'll get into it, like some shit that happened with his wife, and one of his wives, because the Mongol Empire, they did do multiple wives.
Yeah.
So Genghis had, I think, 6 official wives, and he had one, his oldest one, that he liked the best. So she was like his main wife. And I think he had a bunch of concubines too, because like I said, they kind of all did. This is where, because we were talking about this before the show started too, this is where the whole thing about, X% of the population can trace their genes back to Genghis Khan. They're like, well, the thing about it, that's kind of a little bit of an urban legend maybe, because like, look, we don't have his DNA, so it's like we wouldn't be able to check anyway.
They never found his body.
They don't know where his body is.
Yeah, he hid it, yeah.
Because it was hidden by all accounts. And there was, I don't remember when it happened, but I was like watching a documentary earlier, and they said there was one period where it was historically documented that some of his direct descendants had actually been wiped out. So they're not really sure like how many descendants he had. So they're like, even if it was true that he had all these descendants, there's like, there'd be no way to prove it. You know what I mean? I think they're just extrapolating just because of how far ranging like his conquering was. And you're just led to assume because he had a bunch of wives, because he had a bunch of concubines, because he was likely, as most of them were at the time, like taking the spoils of war, which meant women, and possibly impregnating them like all over Asia and Eastern Europe or the Middle East or whatever. So it's like, so yeah, it's possible, but there's no way of proving it because they don't have his DNA. You know what I mean? They do know that he had a number of sons because of, one of like his sons succeeded him like after he died. So they do know about that. But other than that, they're not entirely sure.
Would you drink that and I'll make you know? Okay.
Okay, that's all. I can't really chug all this right now. I don't want to leave all that dead air. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Tammy said, mostly if you agreed to follow him, he would let you live. Most of the time. Most of the time. Like I said, there were some situations where that was generally their MO. Like I said, they would roll into a place and they'd be like, hey, you submit to our rule or we're going to kill all you motherfuckers. And if the people said no way, then they'd be like, okay, your fucking funeral. And then they would proceed to wipe out all the motherfuckers. But sometimes they would say, if you surrender, we'll let you live. And the people in the town were like, okay, we do. But then they would kill them anyway. Sometimes. They didn't always do that. So they didn't always keep their word. He was generally, it seemed, by all accounts, a man of honor who rewarded loyalty. But he also did some fucked up shit like that. Where he said, yeah, we'll let you live. But he's like, psych. And then he just killed them all anyway. He did do that a few times.
It might have been a threat.
Yeah, I think that he, like I said, it seemed like he did everything. I don't know if he enjoyed it. But it seemed like he did everything just for coldly practical reasons. Like I said, we want this town. We want this region. We want all of their shit. And these people won't submit to us, so we're just putting them all to the sword, I think it was just that. I don't think he was a psychopath or bloodthirsty in the way that he enjoyed it. I think he just did it because they were just in his way. That's all. I'm not saying that makes it better. I'm just saying that, I don't know. Like I said, the weird thing about it is they don't know, like I said, most of the shit they know about him comes from like one book. You know what I mean? So there are no contemporary accounts of him, like people that knew him while he was alive, like saying, hey, he was like this or that and the other thing. So they're kind of just trying to piece together things from secondhand and like people, like, shit other people have said.
Well, about sparing somebody and then going back on it later. No, that makes a lot of sense. Think about it. You're traveling around. You're giving guys an offer they can't refuse. Some of them say, okay, we'll join up with you. But then they're hanging out with you for a while and your other guys are saying, hey, man, them dudes are bad.
Yeah.
Just because you conquered them doesn't mean they're good. Okay? They're like, yeah, they've integrated in with us, but they plan on fucking slitting our throats and stealing money and running.
You can't trust them.
You can't trust them. All right? These guys are going to try to kill us or take over. They want to assassinate you and take over. It's okay. We're going to kill them then. It's probably shit just like that. Which, it was something practical.
I was going to say, too, that another thing that Genghis Khan was real big on, which was kind of unusual in this era, was that he was, because most, throughout most of human history, especially in this time period, it was all about connections, like what family are you from, like what the succession was, everything like that. Genghis Khan was really into meritocracy. He would... it didn't matter where you came from, you could be some fucking bum or something like that. If you were really good at shit, he'd be like, okay, you can be a fucking general, you know what I mean? So he was very egalitarian in that way, which, like I said, was kind of odd. And like I said, kind of unusual for the time period. So much so that a lot of writers commented on it.
As far as we know.
Yeah, well, like I said, that's kind of what a lot of people said. Yeah. Because one of his main generals, Subutai, he started out as like a shepherd or a blacksmith or something like that, like some kind of lowly quote unquote thing, and he ended up being like his main fucking general.
I guess that's where fucking
Conan, yeah.
Milius, yeah. Fucking John Milius got the Conan character.
Yeah, Genghis
Subutai
Khan's main general, his most famous one, was named Subutai.
Okay, yeah.
And he was like at the forefront of most of his main campaigns.
Right.
And he was supposedly a brilliant tactician, as was Genghis himself. Obviously, or they would not have been able to conquer as much of the fucking world as they conquered. And most of the time, they were outnumbered. They were just better at it.
Well, they had really good horsemen.
Yeah, that was one thing that a lot of
Yeah.
historians and stuff have pointed out is like the Mongols, because of the environment that they grew up in on the steppes, most of them started riding horses when they were toddlers. So it was like breathing to them. It was like second nature. And they also had like specially made saddles that were like wood, like stiff wood on the front and the back and stuff. But they learned how to ride horses and like shoot bows and arrows like from horses like from a very, very early age. So much so that it's like when they were traveling, and their horses were smaller than they used ponies, but they said that they were so adept at horsemanship that it's like they usually wouldn't even get off them. Yeah. They would just like sleep on there. They would like eat dinner on there. They would like fucking...
Yeah. They were like the Lakota.
Yeah, they just didn't get off.
They were like a Great Plains Indian. They were kind of like that. You don't want to fuck with them either.
Yeah. That's the thing.
They could be on horseback and hang off the neck of a horse and then fire a bow underneath the horse's fucking neck.
Yeah.
For cover against rounds. You know, when you were shooting at them. They'd hide behind the horses. They were fucking shooting underneath the horse's neck.
Yeah.
You know, without a saddle. You know, I grew up riding too. That'd be hard. I don't know where you'd put your right... I guess you put your right foot around the underneath the neck and use your fucking leg to hold in. You're grabbing the mane. But I don't know how you'd draw the bowstring.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe
I know,
you're just
it's
holding
like...
on with just your legs.
Well, that's what they said about the Mongols, is that they
yeah.
didn't need their arms.
Yeah.
They were so used to riding horses and their legs were so accustomed to it that it's like they only needed their legs like to stay on the horse, and they could do all kind of other shit with their arms and not worry about it. I guess you put
your left knee over the horse's fucking withers, you know, where the neck meets the fucking front, you know, the body, and then lock in there, and then have your other leg locked in under the underside of it. And if you don't weigh a whole lot, you could probably do it. Well, evidently they did do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and like I said, same thing here, where it's just like they just grew up on horseback, and they were just like completely comfortable with it.
Yeah. It's hard to fight dudes who actually kind of don't need to be trained as soldiers, that they just kind of grow up doing that.
Yeah. That's because they all did.
Yeah, they work together well. It's just normal for them.
And they pretty much recruited everybody, like, you know, just young people, old people. They didn't care. They're just like, as long as you knew your shit, it's like they just throw you in there and you could have this. And yeah, well, I mean, and it wasn't just that. It wasn't just that they were super, super good on horseback and they were really good with bows and arrows, like especially like while they were moving and stuff. But they had a bunch of like shit weapons and shit too. Like they had fucking catapults and ladders, and they would chuck fucking explosive shit at people like naphtha and shit like that at people. So it's, you know,
siege warfare.
Yeah.
Siege weapons, siege engines.
And they were real good at psyops. They were really good at, they had spies everywhere. They were really good at spreading disinformation. Like they knew all the tactics, you know what I mean? Like if they were planning on doing a siege on a place, they would send some scouts ahead and like start some fucking rumors and stuff. Like try to get some infighting going on, like between the nobles and all that. They would do that kind of shit, you know, like espionage.
They were doing shinobi tactics.
Yeah, like espionage type shit, so that everybody would be like kind of infighting and they'd be like weakened by the time they got there. So they did that kind of crap too. It wasn't just all brute force. It was a lot of like psychological tactics, and because they did some real fucked up shit. At some places, like obviously word of that spread. So like when the Mongols showed up at your gates, you're like, oh shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like you knew something bad was going to happen. So they were using their reputation, like their reputation preceded them. So they took advantage of that as well. And that was deliberate. That was obviously deliberate. Okay, so before we get too far into it, well, too late for that. But I wanted to mention that we have a new patron. Just today,
Yeah, that's right.
I was notified that we have a new patron named John A. Brown. So thank you very much, John A. Brown.
Thanks very much, John.
Thank you very much for your support of the show.
Yep, you're sending us $20 a month. Thank you very much.
Very, very nice. Very nice.
That's a significant amount of money.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, we really do appreciate it.
Yeah.
Tammy said maybe they were centaurs. Yeah, maybe so. Like I said, they just grew up on horseback. They were used to it. That's just kind of how they got around on the steppes, which is just a really barren environment. And they were nomadic. Like the Mongols, they didn't have cities or nothing. They just lived in like yurts. And then it's like every season they would move. They just moved around like a few times a year. Like whenever, hey, the grazing here is not any good anymore or whatever. Like they would move someplace else. So it's like they didn't really do much agriculture. They didn't do much of they were like a very nomadic people. So they were kind of used to living their life on the go, as it were. So as I mentioned, the life of Genghis Khan, pretty much most of the shit about it comes from one single book called The Secret History of the Mongols, which came out around 1240, which was about... He died in 1227, they're pretty sure. So not long after he died, but it was after he died. There were some later things about him, like I said, from different sources, but since that was the closest to the time that he was actually alive, most people think. But the thing about it is they don't really know who wrote it, and they're not entirely sure how much of it is exaggerated, but, it's all we got, obviously. So... Genghis Khan, as we mentioned earlier, is not his name. That was a title. He was actually born Temujin. Now, he was born into something called, and I'm sure I'm going to butcher all of these fucking pronunciations, so please forgive me. He's born into a clan called the Borjigin clan? I don't know. Of the Mongol tribes. Because at this time... the Mongols it was a bunch of different tribes, and they're always fucking fighting with each other, as tribes tend to do. No unification, nothing. Like I said, there were all these nomadic tribes on these big, huge, vast steppes, and they were just like always fighting with each other. So his dad, whose name was Yasuge, was a chieftain, and he was born to the principal wife, because his dad had more than one, named Herlin. Now, Herlin had actually been kidnapped by the dad from another tribe called the Merkit. And she had been kidnapped from the dude she was supposed to marry, whose name was Chiledu or something like that. Ooh, thank you very much. Papa77 sent us a super chat.
Thank you very much.
I don't know much about Khan. I look forward to hearing more. Yeah, I got really into, I didn't know a huge amount about him. Like I said, I remember a little bit about him at school and maybe a documentary here and there. But I didn't know, a huge amount about him. So I kind of did a little bit of a deep dive. I'm trying to, it was too much for, one show. Because I'm looking at all this shit and I'm reading it. And I'm like, this is fascinating, but the show's going to be, 7 hours long. So it's so I had to kind of, winnow it down a little bit. And just keep it to, super interesting stuff. So his mom had actually been kidnapped from another tribe. But that was pretty common practice back then.
Anybody living on the plains is kind of like living on the ocean, and they were pirates.
Yeah.
And pirates captured people constantly, fucking raided. They also shared. They had a kind of democratic values and egalitarian pirate, but they were also enemies to humanity. The Mongols were a lot like pirates. Yeah,
that's a good analog.
Yeah.
Yeah,
if you fell in good with them, they were mad, bad, and dangerous to know. But if they were your friends, you could do well. Yeah. But if
you got on their bad side, then you were in big fucking trouble.
Yeah.
You're in big.
And you better pull your own weight, or they'll kill you. But the pirates are like that too. You better be good in a fight. If you show any cowardice, your ass is grass. Yeah, you better give it your all when you're with them guys.
Yeah. So, I will say that the abduction of his mom, I bring it up because that's going to factor into things a little bit later on. Now, no one is entirely sure why he was given the name Temujin. The most popular story is that his dad named him after a captive that he had gotten from another, like a guy he had captured from another tribe who had that name. And I guess maybe that was something of a thing. It's like, hey, I captured this dude from another tribe. It's like, I'm going to name my kid after him. I don't know if that was a thing, but that's like the main story. But some historians have also said that the root of the name Timur means iron, and that perhaps the name Temujin means blacksmith, which could also be true as well. But the most popular story is that his dad named him after somebody he'd captured, which, you know, kind of sounds more like this kind of thing. So they're not entirely sure when Temujin was born. The most favored date is 1162, but some historians favor 1155, some 1167. Not entirely sure when, you know, obviously nobody wrote it down. One of the biggest legends about his birth was that when he was born, he was clutching a clot of blood in his right hand. And evidently, this is a good omen, usually, that means that the baby will become like a great warrior someday. Or a bloodthirsty tyrant. You know.
Sounds like
one
bullshit.
or the other. Whatever. I'm just saying, that's
yeah.
like what every single documentary mentions.
Yeah,
this.
most histories of great men have some kind of uncanny birth.
That he had some kind of auspicious birth.
Some kind of auspicious, yeah.
It's the Jesus thing.
Same thing with fucking, it was the same thing with fucking Alexander. I think Alexander claimed that she was impregnated by a serpent. Was that what it was? Or what was it?
That would take some doing.
Yeah, or some shit like that. And that he
what does it do? Like crawl up in there? And
yeah, he possibly. Spit? I don't remember how. He possibly may have been a demigod. That was the fucking that his father was one of the gods. I don't remember which one it was, but
I mean, compared to that, I kind of feel like Genghis's origin story. That's pretty minor. It is entirely possible that a baby could be born with a clot of blood in their hand. That's not that weird. So it's like, and it's entirely possible that they did have a legend at the time. Yeah. Because you know how there was a thing where, I think this is probably from the Middle Ages. It might be older, but like if the baby was born with like that caul, like a skin over their face, like it meant they were like witchcraft, or they're psychic or something. Yeah. That was a very common belief.
Yeah, I have a feeling that these stories, these birth narratives, weren't known in the lifetime of the person they're talking about. I think they were added after death by the person writing the history, because they're trying to describe the beginnings of a person that has already been confirmed as a famous motherfucker.
Yeah.
So you gotta somehow explain this.
Yeah, they couldn't have just been some random motherfucker. They weren't random.
Oh no, fucking, you know, the Star of Bethlehem, that kind of shit, you know.
Like the universe knew they were special. Like
right, yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's some kind of weird proclivity that humans have to.
It's just, it was a trope of the
It definitely is. It
Yeah.
definitely is.
There was always kind of these religious elements or supernatural elements to histories of great men.
Yeah, but like I said, compared to some of the other ones I've heard, this one's pretty minor. You know what I mean? It at least could have happened.
I guarantee you that blood clot was not in his hand. That was
probably
somebody
not.
said afterwards.
Probably not.
Yeah.
But you know, like I said, it could have happened though, so it's not that crazy. So
artistic license.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Straw Dog said supposedly a comet passed over the Hawaiian Islands when King Kamehameha was born. Yeah. They all got stories. Yeah, like I said, it's always kind of like after the fact.
So it's after the fact.
Yeah. Because it's like, oh, we knew he was special from the beginning.
Yeah. When I was born, a fucking garbage truck passed out in front of the house that had toxic waste in it.
That explains a lot, Tom.
Which foretold the man that I was going to become.
That's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah. You can make up any shit.
Now I need to come up with some like kind
of how ridiculous it is.
Kind of really cool like thing about my birth.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll think of something.
On the day, at the time of my birth, there was a huge fucking intergalactic explosion. A supernova went off. You know, they can tell you anything.
Yeah, it's like you can't prove it.
You can't prove it, yeah.
So, you know what I mean?
It's on the far side of the universe.
Yeah.
It's far side of the galaxy.
We couldn't see it.
Couldn't see it.
So it's fine. So, like I said, they don't really know much about his childhood, obviously, because, you know, they didn't really write anything down. You're led to assume that he did the same shit that all the other kids did. He just learned to ride horses and went hunting on the steppes and all that other kind of crap. When he was 8 years old, as was the custom, he was assigned a bride, or eventually, whose name was, I've heard it pronounced differently. I've heard it pronounced Berta. I've also heard it pronounced Borte. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, but he was, you know, there was an arranged marriage. So he was 8 years old. I don't know how old she was. She was actually the daughter of another chieftain, whose name was Desechin. Now, this was obviously done to, you know, cement an alliance. And actually, Berta was kind of like a high-priced bride, you know what I mean? Because Desechin had like a stronger, you know, he was kind of more powerful, right? So they're trying to like establish this kind of alliance. So what Desechin said is like, well, I want Temujin, little baby Genghis Khan, to come and stay with them, and kind of work for him, like, because he'd be in his debt in the future. So he's got to work here like as a kid. So
he's marrying his daughter off to a subordinate underling.
Yeah, a bit. I mean, they were both chieftains, but I guess like the other guy was like slightly higher on the totem pole.
It's about loyalty.
Yeah. So he's like, okay, well...
And you're rewarding the guy who's working with you.
Yeah. So he's like, okay, so send the son here. He can live with her and grow up with her.
So Temujin married up.
Yeah. Yeah. And by all accounts, I mean, like I said, he ended up having 6 wives and a bunch of concubines, and I'm sure he probably raped multiple women over the course of his shenanigans. But by all accounts, he really did seem to be super into that first wife. Like, he went to her for everything, and he was...
Well, they grew up together.
Yeah, so he went there to...
Probably saw her more as somebody like a relative of his family, you know, a family member.
Yeah, probably, yeah, like I said, because they were probably both children. Like I said, I don't know how old she was when it was arranged, but he was 8.
She was probably about the same. They'd be a little
probably around the same age.
Yeah.
Now, here's what happened, though. So his dad goes and drops him off at the place where his bride-to-be is. And then he's on his way back home, and he stops, and there's like a band of, I guess, Tatars? It's not Tartars. Tatars.
Tatars.
There's a band of those.
Yeah.
And
badasses.
They offer him some food and drink, which was the common parlor, because, you know, it's the steppes. It's a very unforgiving environment. Normally, the protocol was that if you saw a traveler on the road and you had food or drink, you would offer it to them, like, just to be friendly or whatever. So he's like, okay, cool. So they're like, hey, come and eat with us. And he's like, okay. And turned out, though, that the Tatars recognized him as somebody who'd kind of fucked with them in the past, and they poisoned him. So, you know.
Well, that's a bitch move there.
Rude. Yeah. They poisoned him.
You didn't want to try to poison a fucking Viking. That was a huge insult.
Yeah.
Only women poisoned people. It was a huge insult. So, wonder why didn't they just straight up fucking fight him? I'm
not sure. Yeah, that's
poisoning somebody traditionally is a bitch move.
That is kind of a bitch move, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see why some people do it if that's like your only option.
Well, if you need deniability.
That too.
Like you got to poison your dad so you can get his throne. That was fucking common.
That was very common.
Yeah. And he's already old. You're just trying to put him out early.
Just trying to like speed things along.
Speed him up because you want to take over.
Speed things along.
Yeah.
Oh no! It's like he died and he was already super old. Well, shit happens. You know what I mean? He was old.
But you gotta understand. You know, we look at that now. We're like, man, that was ass. The practicality ruled back then. You probably only got rid of him a couple years early. You know, he probably was going to die another 2-3 years anyway.
Yeah.
Because they were usually...
It's still kind of shitty, but yeah.
But it was usually done at a time where there was crisis.
Yeah.
Where, man, this is some bad shit happening, and he can't handle this problem. We got to get him out of here. It was usually shit like that.
Yeah. Big Dog says, wasn't there a John Wayne movie where he played Genghis Khan?
Can you imagine? Yes.
Yes.
And I haven't seen it.
What the hell was the name of that movie? It's famous
Yeah.
for how terrible it was. Oh, and it's also famous for where they filmed it was like lousy with radiation, right? Because didn't they film it like right where the fucking where they did the A-bomb tests and shit, and didn't like a bunch of people get radiation poisoning? I can't remember what the name of the movie was.
I'm proud to say that
it's a pretty famous story.
I'm proud to say that I've never seen a John Wayne movie.
I've seen one or two, but it was a long time because my grandpa used to watch them, so they were on TV sometimes when I was growing up.
I've just seen little clips of it, and it's just the dude's just real wooden, and I'm like, what do they see in this dude?
Yeah, I don't really get it.
Yeah, he wasn't an action hero, not by my standards.
And he wasn't that good an actor, honestly.
No, but
and him playing a Mongolian dude, it's like, who the fuck thought that was a good idea? I know that was kind of like a thing back then. It's like, hey, let's take this fucking white ass actor and make him have slanty eyes.
They gave him eye folds, and they
Jesus.
they should try to fucking dress him up as.
They did it to Christopher Lee too. They did. He was in one of those terrible Fu Manchu movies.
Yeah, it was okay. That was a fucking cool movie though.
Well, no, he was in one that was the Castle of Fu Manchu,
yeah, that was not a
which
good one.
was cringingly
The Peter
terrible.
Sellers fucking Fu Manchu is hilarious.
That was actually pretty
funny. Good, yeah.
But they were kind of parodying.
Yeah, it was a joke.
They weren't taking it seriously.
Yeah, but what was I gonna say about fucking I don't know.
John Wayne.
Yeah, just
The Conqueror. Thank you. That's the name of it.
Yeah.
The Conqueror. Now I kind of want to see it. I don't think I've ever sat through. I've seen clips of it, but I don't think I've ever sat through the whole thing.
I don't know. I just don't. I never hear anything about his movies being good, so I just never was really compelled to watch one. I mean,
it's such a boomer thing. It's such a boomer.
I like some of the old classic.
They're boomer type movies. I like old westerns. I like some
of the old Cecil B. DeMille fucking.
I like those too.
The greatest story ever told with Moses and fucking.
Yeah, I like those too.
Yeah, you had fucking Charlton Heston. Cheston, I call his ass Cheston.
I like the old spaghetti westerns and stuff.
Cheston.
But I never really got into the John Wayne movies.
And fucking, what's his name? Fucking Yul Brynner playing Pharaoh. That's a fucking epic movie. It's almost like a sci-fi movie.
It is.
It's
pretty entertaining.
Yeah, it's very entertaining. It's real. It tries to be epic and as serious as, you know, and grandiose and everything, you know. It's cool. It's okay. It's good. So it's good to watch. It is very theatrical, but that's why you're watching it.
Well, and that was kind of a thing back then.
That was the thing back then. Evidently, like Cleopatra. Wasn't there one about Cleopatra?
Yeah.
With fucking, what's her name? Fucking
Elizabeth Taylor.
Elizabeth Taylor. I've seen bits of it.
That supposedly bombed.
I've seen bits of it. It looked pretty good. I don't know.
I thought it was pretty good. Like it's super long. It's like 3.5 hours or something. It might be longer than that.
You gotta watch it.
But I remember liking it, but it's been a while since I've seen it, and I was like, why did this bomb? It's like this is actually pretty good.
I think it's because they spent so much money on it.
I think that's probably why. Like, there's no way it could make its money back.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like now where it's like, hey, we spent $1 billion on this Marvel movie, but then it makes like $50 bajillion, and it's like, oh, it's fine. But you know what I mean? So I don't know. But yeah, so Big Dog says it's horrible. The Conqueror, the movie.
Is it?
Yeah. Tigglytude says, did you ever play the Carmen Sandiego game on PC? I don't think I ever did. I remember it, but I don't think I ever played it. They had a whole thing on Genghis Khan. It was fun to play. Ooh, that's kind of cool that they had all that. I wonder how accurate it was. SideQuest Hero said, by all accounts, he was a piece of shit human being. So, John Wayne.
John Wayne, yeah.
Ooh, now we should do a show about him. Wonder if there's any kind of like scandals or anything like kind of interesting that I could
know,
look
like
into.
my granddad's generation, the greatest generation, they loved him.
Yeah.
My dad didn't. He didn't really like John Wayne that much. Boomers didn't seem to really give a shit about John Wayne. I think he was from prior generation, really.
Yeah, maybe so, because it was more my grandpa's
yeah, he's
thing
just kind of stuffy
than my dad's thing.
Stuffy and kind of generic to me, and wasn't really physically imposing. I think he was like probably 6 foot something, but other than that, I'd run through that dude. You know, every time I saw him, he looked like he was kind of pot bellied,
kind of scrawny.
But just the way he, little arms, and just the way he carried himself, like he was a fucking. But you know what, Fucking Charlton Heston did that too. He was kind of a tall guy. But you could tell, he wasn't all that strong. But he fucking pretended like he was. The standards were different back then, I guess.
Tiggly Jude says, "What the hell is a spaghetti western? Why is that a subgenre?" It's a western that was made in Italy, like those of Sergio Leone.
Who said that?
Tiggly Jude did.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah, it's just kind of like a funny, like kind of disparaging term about. But the thing about spaghetti the thing about spaghetti westerns, it started out as a joke.
Yeah.
But now it's just kind of got established as like a regular. But the thing about it is that most of those westerns from that era, like, and a lot of them had Clint Eastwood in them, they had American actors and stuff, but they were made by Italian directors and generally made in Italy.
In Italy, because it looked like California.
But a lot of those movies are great.
Yeah.
And they were way better than the American westerns that were coming out at the time, which a lot of people did acknowledge.
Yeah.
Like I said, especially the Sergio Leone
They were kind of like a Mad Max movie. They were more fucking post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, but they call them spaghetti westerns.
Yeah, the best one you want to start out with is the Sergio Leone trilogy, fucking The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, and the other ones that come with it, what they call the Man with No Name trilogy. That's what it's called. And got Clint Eastwood in it.
And those are brilliant
Fucking
movies.
yeah, they're good. And it's epic soundtracks. It's not a soundtrack, it's a score. Epic scores. I mean, it made it sound important as shit. Fucking Eastwood comes back to the United States, starts his own studio, and basically makes American-made spaghetti westerns. Because the Italians knew how to make a western. Some of them. Not all of them, but some of them. And so you have fucking Pale Rider, fucking High Plains Drifter, fucking Unforgiven. They're basically spaghetti westerns.
It kind of reinvigorated the American Western because
the
American Westerns were kind of very black and white. They were just kind of very not black and white like literally, but like morally black and white.
You could tell everyone was
good guy, bad guy. Like it was just kind of very milk toast.
Yeah, and you could tell everybody was in a costume.
The Italian ones were very like morally gray.
Yeah.
And were a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
So,
I want to get Fistful of Dynamite, too. And this was Once Upon a Time in America. I have it, but there's another one called Fistful of Dynamite. I want to see that one.
Yeah.
It's just Sergio Leone.
Somebody said, what's with the left curtain moving from time to time? It could be that one of the kitties is underneath there.
This one over here?
Maybe. No, that's the right... Well...
I don't know what he's looking at.
Because the kitties like to get behind those. And like...
Nobody's there now.
Okay, nobody's there. But if you see it move, it's probably just one of the kitties, like climbing behind there. SideQuest says about John Wayne, he was a massive draft dodger, and he viewed his movies as pro-American propaganda. Isn't that always the fucking way, though?
They would have thought that was a good thing.
Everybody that was just kind of like gung-ho American this and that and the other, they always kind of dodge the draft. Well, I don't shit on draft dodgers because I would have done the same thing if I was in that situation. Because fuck that. But
the war she's talking about is probably Korea.
Yeah, not sure. Like, because I was mostly if you say draft dodger, most people think you need me in Vietnam, but maybe not.
I think he was too old for Vietnam.
Yeah, he might have been. Like now that you mention it.
Yeah.
Big Dog said Crussell would whip John Wayne's ass.
Probably. Yeah.
Big time. Big time. I don't even think it would be a contest. Probably just be one punch. Tigglytoot says, so Italy equals spaghetti. Gotcha. Yeah. And I've even seen spaghetti western is a pretty commonly known term, but I've also seen spaghetti horror, spaghetti other things, like just kind of as a joke.
Yeah. And not all those Italian fucking...
They're not all... A lot of them are shitty, but like I said...
They're not forgotten. They're forgotten.
Yeah.
The ones that are remembered that you can still get on Blu-ray, they're good.
Yeah.
They're good. They're good, and they have a tone that got adopted in America. Sergio Leone, usually.
Yeah, and Straw Dog says, and this is a good point, too, I think Sergio Leone was emulating Kurosawa's samurai movies, who was emulating American westerns, so the influence is circular. It's kind of the same way that Italian horror filmmakers were into, like, Alfred Hitchcock's thrillers, and then, so they made horror movies kind of based on those, which were like giallo movies. And then American filmmakers watched giallo movies and made slasher movies. That's kind of how that happened.
Yeah.
So, again, kind of a circular influence. You can't really say, like, one thing influenced another thing, because it's always, like, a back and forth.
Yeah, 70s Italian horror movies were superior to American ones.
They were a lot gorier, that's for sure.
Too, yeah.
A lot gory. They did not give a fuck.
They didn't always make sense.
That's okay.
But they usually looked good.
That's
okay. They came up with some crazy ass shit.
Yeah. Specifically talking probably about Lucio Fulci's movies, which was early 80s.
Yeah.
And Dario Argento's
Dario
movies.
Argento.
I mean, some of his movies made sense. The Giallo movies mostly made sense. His horror movies kind of made sense, but not really. Not really.
Then there's a fake Giallo movie. You would think it was from India, but it isn't. It's an American movie called Alice, Sweet Alice. Fucking excellent movie.
Yeah, that's like an American
It's
Giallo.
an American version of it. And it feels like it's happening in Italy in a way. And it seems like it's dubbed, but it isn't. It's
I mean,
American.
tonally, it's very much like a Giallo
Yeah.
movie. And I love Giallo
Yeah, they
movies.
copied an Italian movie about a little girl who's murdering people. So you think, supposedly. I mean, you find
There
out.
is a pair of I think they're Argentinian filmmakers that have made a couple of like modern giallos that kind of look like the old ones. One of them was called Francesca. What was the other one called? I can't remember now, but it's like I reviewed it for my other channel. It's like, and they were really cool. Like they did the whole nonsensical. If you just watched it without knowing, you would think that it had come out back then. And I'm just like, I fucking love this. I thought that was so fucking cool. I was like really edified by the fact that like somebody was like as weirdly into Giallo movies as I am. There's just something about them that I just like really,
loves
really
Italian
like.
stuff.
I don't know what it is. There's just something about them that just kind of pushes my buttons.
The way it's shot, the way it's edited, and the weird dubbing.
I just love them. I just love them. There's just something weird about, and I don't usually like dubbing. Usually it pisses me off, but Giallo movies get a pass.
When you see Suspiria, you'll see a good
I mean, that's not
exposition of shot composition and color.
that's not technically a Giallo because that's
Yeah.
a supernatural horror. But Argento
It's
made
Italian,
he made a bunch of
Yeah.
bunch of Giallo movies. Bird with a Crystal Plumage, Profondo Rosso,
Yeah. Really good shot
Tenebrae,
composition.
Opera. I would probably call that a Giallo kind of, but it's kind of a slasher movie too. But well, they're kind of the same thing, slightly. It's slightly different, but it's kind of the same. So they're in the same ballpark. All right, so we got like way off on fucking topic. And then Stradog said Fulci, enough said. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and I would argue, okay, a little bit off topic still, but Fulci's movies, as much as I love his gore flicks, like I love The Beyond, obviously, House by the Cemetery, City of the Living Dead, Zombie, but I would argue that his Giallo movie, which has supernatural aspects to it, which some Giallo did, so it's not like crazy. But his movie The Psychic, which is also called Seven Notes in Black or something like that. That I think that was his best Giallo movie. I love that fucking movie. That's one of my favorite movies of his. And I kind of feel like it's not didn't get the appreciation it deserves. I just really like, and it was the I think Dardano Sacchetti like wrote the screenplay just like he did with The Beyond and all that, if I remember correctly. It's basically about a woman. She has a psychic vision at the beginning that's all these like disjointed images, and as the movie goes on, like all of these kind of images like slot into place, but not in the way that you think they're going to. You know what I mean? It's kind of a murder mystery, as most Giallos are, but I just thought it was really, really well done. Like, I really like the plotting. And it looks gorgeous. It's a gorgeous looking movie. Not gory. There's like one, maybe two, like, kind of gore scenes, but nothing like, people getting their eyeballs popped out or nothing like that. All right, so let's get back to the topic, I guess, because otherwise we're going to be here all fucking night. All fucking night. So, yeah, so where were we? Okay, so he got an arranged marriage when he was 8. Now, Tammy said that she saw a documentary and said that Berta, his betrothed, was a year or two older. Okay. So 9 or 10. So they're around the same age. So, yeah. So his dad drops him off and then gets poisoned. And then he makes it home, but he dies not too long after that. And so after this, he says to one of his retainers or whatever, it's like, hey, go get my kid from that tribe or whatever, and like comes, and then he died. Now, because the dad died, this kind of caused a little bit of a problem, like a power vacuum, I guess, because he was the chieftain, right? Now, Temujin was only, 8 years old at the time, and so he obviously couldn't run the shit. And the thing about it was that, so this was kind of cold-blooded, but you can kind of see why it happened. So the rest of the clan basically left him and his mom and his brothers. They're like, oh well, and they just left them, like, alone. Good luck. They just left them
So
there.
they lost all their status.
Yeah, pretty much. And they just, and the implication being that they pretty much left them out there on the steppes to die because they were out there alone. You know what I mean? You kind of need, it's like I said, it's a very harsh environment.
The tribe got a new leader, so
yeah,
they didn't need him anymore.
And they're just like, and they so they just left them.
It wasn't like a medieval European arrangement where the heir to the throne was now the fucking king, and you had to have a regent, you know.
Yeah.
Rule from wasn't like that, evidently.
Yeah,
like
not
Native Americans.
Not as much.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's because the kids were too young.
Yeah.
They were basically like, oh well, we'll just find a new later. Bye. Good luck with that. Don't starve. Which I kind of feel like everybody probably expected them to, but obviously they did not. They actually did okay. It was kind of rough, obviously.
But he's still married to that girl, though, right?
They weren't married yet. They were just betrothed.
He didn't go back to her dad?
He married her later.
He didn't go back to her dad?
No, he did later.
Okay.
But like I said, he's still a little kid at this point.
Okay.
He's like 8 years old.
So that deal was still on.
Yeah, it was still. Yeah, he did go back and marry her later. But I think what happened was that, you know, there was really no unification. It was, like I said, these are a bunch of like nomadic tribes, right? So it's like, I think what happened was that in the meantime, like the dad of the betrothed, like thought the kid just died, like starved to death or something. Yeah. They thought that that's what happened to them, like when they were abandoned. So, you know, like I said, it was rough. They had to scrape out a few years, but they obviously survived. But as the kids started getting older, some little tensions started to develop with the brothers and whatnot. Now, Temujin was obviously the son of the principal wife, whose name was, what did I say her name was? Herlin? I think her name was Herlin or something like that.
You said Boylin?
No, it started with an H.
Okay.
I had it up here, but it's like, it's spelled weird, but I saw some documentaries where they pronounced it, and I'm pretty sure they pronounced it Herlin, even though that's not it, not at all what like the word looks like. But so you had this brother, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing this wrong too, but his name was Bector or something like that. Now, Bector was a couple years older than him, but he was the son of another wife. So he was like slightly lower in status, but he was older. You know what I mean? So there was kind of like some tension going on with them, like what was the succession going to be? And there was even there was a possibility, like according to the law at the time, and I know this is kind of weird, but the older son, who I think was only 10 or 11 at this stage that we're talking, could actually marry Herlin, his stepmom, because they weren't biologically related. And then he could like kind of take over then, like as soon as he got to his majority, which would have been 15. So when he got to be 15, he could marry his stepmom technically, and then he could like take over. That didn't happen obviously, but it's like that was allowed, like you could do that evidently. Now, as time went on, like I said, the boys kind of fought some. Now, Temujin had a younger brother named Kassar. I think his name was Kassar. And the two of them conspired to kill the older brother, Bektar. Now, the most common story that I heard was that Temujin, when he was 13 years old, he was at a river fishing with his brothers, and Bektar, like, he caught a fish, and then his brother snatched the fish out of his hand. And so Temujin immediately, like, whips out his bow and arrow and goes, "Whonk," and, like, kills him. Like, just like, hey, don't fuck with me kind of thing. I think that might have been an oversimplification, or just kind of like a just so story, like saying, like, look, like, even when he was 13, he was, like, so ruthless that just his brother doing that, he'd be like, fuck you, bitch, and he just, like, killed him immediately, like, without even hesitating. I'm not entirely sure that's what happened, because from some other sources that I read, they said the thing about the older brother, Bektar, was that he maybe reportedly had a habit of like hoarding food and like not sharing it with the rest of the family as he was supposed to be doing, because they were supposed to be, gathering food for the rest of the family, obviously. And that he would keep more of it for himself, and that Temujin was like kind of sick of it. And so that was apparently just like the last straw, and so he just kind of snapped. Which, like I said, you can kind of see how that happened. But I have seen other sources say that him and his younger brother, Qatar, like ambushed him and killed him too. Like I've seen that. But as far as as far as everyone says, his older brother got killed, and Temujin was very likely responsible for it, either with his other brother or alone. So he killed his brother, his half brother. It's technically his half brother.
Had to get him out of the way.
It was the same dad. It was a different mom. So he got him out of the way. So yeah. Around
this, that kind of shit a lot, though.
Well, yeah, like I said,
they were doing that back in England.
That's pretty common.
Yeah,
that's pretty common. Yeah, Tammy said what I saw was the older brother always picked on the two younger boys, so they ambushed him and killed him. Yeah, like I said, I heard a bunch of different stories. The most common one is the one about he snatched the fish out of his hand and Temujin was like, "Fuck you, buddy," and like killed him with a bow and arrow. But most of the other stuff I saw, like said, it was a lot more complicated than that. Like it had been, there had been leading up to it, and he was like hoarding food, and he was like picking on them because they were younger, and all this other kind of shit. And they finally just had enough of his crap and like decided to, which it's kind of a lot more understandable.
They weren't in the modern world. They didn't have a fucking criminal justice system and investigators and shit like that.
Yeah,
you laid down the law yourself.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, like he didn't get in trouble for it.
No.
You could just do that shit.
They were your own family members. You had kind of like an authority to do that.
Yeah.
Quality control within the own family member. Within
yeah.
Your own
it's
family
like, hey, you're being a dick. Don't.
Yeah.
You're
in
dead.
most cultures, the males, senior males, had the power of life and death over everybody underneath them in the family.
Yeah, that was pretty common.
Yeah, they were the main law enforcement agents. They're like, oh, you're fucking up. Oh, I can't stand on that. Bring him over here. Kill him.
Yeah.
All right. Now, you tell the wife, now you belong to this guy.
Yeah.
They do shit like that.
All right, now let's move on to the next order of business. Yeah, Tammy said the youngest got his attention, and Temujin shot him in the back. Yeah, I mean, that could be. Like I said, there's a lot of different stories around it. But, obviously, I think the story about the older brother just snatching the fish out of his hand, and then Temujin just being like, fuck you, buddy, and like killing him with the bow and arrow like immediately, I think that was added later. Like, to show, look how ruthless he was, even when he was 13 years old. You know what I mean? I think it was more a case of that. I think it was a lot more complicated than that.
He's probably a normal 13-year-old for the time.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that's great, like killing your brother, but I'm just saying it just wasn't uncommon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anybody would have batted an eye. Also around this time period, Temujin developed a friendship with another boy whose name was Jamuka.
That sounds like a drink.
It does kind of.
Let me get a bottle of Jamuka.
Jamuka. Yeah, it's kind of like Jamocha.
Yeah, it's like mocha.
Yeah, you can get like the mocha flavor. Yeah. Mocha Jamuka. He was another kid that was, had the same kind of background as him. Now, in the book, The Secret History of the Mongols, this was kind of funny because I saw like this quote from it. And then a lot of people were kind of speculating on it. It's like, can we talk about what that means? But they, when they were about 11 years old, they met and they essentially did like the Mongolian equivalent of like becoming blood brothers, which is called an Anda Pact. So that's what they did. So it's like, we're brothers like forever or whatever, which obviously didn't really work out that way. I mean, if you know anything about this guy, like, yeah, they got they got into a little tiff later on. Now, because the family was fatherless and abandoned, little Temujin got taken prisoner like so many times. Like, he was always getting fucking kidnapped for one reason and another. The most famous one, and this story always comes up like in biographies of him, he was captured by this one tribe, and they put this big wooden collar, like some sources say collar, some are talking like a board, like stocks, like that size, like they put that around his neck, like, because for whatever reason they didn't kill him, they just thought it'd be funnier to like kind of leave him in the camp like with this fucking shit around his neck, so they thought that was funny. But the story goes...
Was his hands through it, or was just...
I don't think his hands were through it.
I think it feed himself.
Yeah, I think it was just around his neck.
Right.
But like I said, I don't know how big it was.
Right.
Because like some just said collar, but some said it was like a board, and I was picturing like stocks, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that, but not with his hands through it.
Well, the Mongolians, up until even the 1900s, did weird shit to prisoners, locking a Mongolian death coffin, which is a prison that was like a coffin with a hole in it, and fucking, oh yeah, and you shat in it. You only got out once a week.
Pretty gross.
And that was that was in the modern, there's photographs of it. Just look up Mongolian death coffin. Yeah, there's...
Like I said, think how much farther along in human progress we would be if most humans throughout history didn't use their intellect to think of like more fucked up ways to kill other people.
Yeah. Well, it was more like a prison.
Yeah.
They didn't have normal prisons, but they had these boxes they could put somebody in to imprison them. And they were in there for a certain amount of time or until they died. They had different sentences. But it was up in the modern era. I think up into the 1920s they were doing that. The Mongolians, man... They were fucking testosterone infused. They did some fucking hardcore shit.
Like fucking... Sorry, that just made me think of tea.
Oh, I met a Mongolian guy a couple of years back up at Starbucks. He was hilarious. I liked him.
I gotta pee.
Big old guy. He thought shit was funny. Kind of reminded me of a Samoan. Same kind of... Or a Pacific Islander. Kind of the same disposition. Big. He's a big dude. Probably about 6 feet. Looked pretty tough. Could speak English well. But he'd only been here for a few years, so he learned it quickly. And was kind of like jolly. You could tell that he's just laughing at shit. But you also could tell that fucking if you pissed that dude off, he would fuck you up. Which, being in the army with a bunch of Pacific Islanders, guys from fucking Micronesia, fucking Hawaii... You know, we're talking about Hawaiian Islanders, not so much fucking just white people living in Hawaii, and also fucking Samoans. Hell yeah. And there was in Egypt, we served with the British Fijians. They were there too. You don't want to fuck with them island boys, man. Especially once they've had a few drinks. Those motherfuckers are mean. They're mean when they're drunk. But that's the way that Mongolian guy fucking struck me. Kind of like a Samoan kind of in disposition. So you could definitely tell there's a warrior past there in the genes. Yeah.
All right. So he's in this camp with this thing around his neck. And he's like, fuck this, I'm blowing this popsicle stand. And he hid in like the river for a little while. Because the tribe was having this big party. And he's like, ooh, here's my chance, because everyone's, like, distracted, right? So he hides in the river, and then he hides in the tent of this guard. The guard had evidently seen him in the river, but hadn't reported it. So he goes in the tent, and there's two different accounts of this. Either he goes in the tent, and the dude thinks the kid is... Because he's still a kid at this point, pretty much. Thinks the kid is like so cool and like so charismatic that he decides he's going to shelter this kid at great personal risk, I might add, and then help him escape, which he does. I think the more likely story that I heard was that Temujin essentially blackmailed him by coming in the tent and saying, hey, take this fucking thing off my neck and help me escape, or I'm going to tell this whole tribe that you saw me trying to escape and didn't do shit about it, and you'll get in trouble. So those are the two differing accounts that I've heard. I don't know which one is true. Again, I think that because there were so many accounts of Temujin being like super charismatic, which I guess he must have been to have gotten to the heights that he got to.
Yeah, when you become a warrior emperor, you got charisma. That's the only way.
Yeah.
Men have to follow you.
Yeah, but like I said,
you for a reason.
So I don't know but the thing about blackmailing him, that has also been put forward as like, look how shrewd he was. Like he was still just a kid and he knew enough to like leverage. It's like, hey, I'm going to I'm going to tell on you if you don't like help me.
That's dark side.
So it could be like either thing.
That's dark side human engineering 101. Mm-hmm. You got the goods on somebody, you squeeze them. so you can move ahead.
Yeah, which to me seems more likely.
Yeah.
But it could have gone either way, honestly.
It's got to be a mixture, though, man. You got to be carrots and sticks.
Yeah.
You can never become emperor by just wielding the stick. Because then all of a sudden everybody hates you.
Which he did seem to understand that. Because he had very, very loyal followers.
You got to have lots of friends.
Yeah.
The fucking...
Yeah, if everybody hates you, somebody's going to assassinate
kill you. Yeah.
Somebody's going to assassinate your ass eventually.
Yeah, you learned that in Roman history.
Yeah.
Pussy-ass, weak-ass Roman emperors ordering people's deaths. This motherfucker can't do 2 push-ups. Fucking and then eventually the Praetorian Guard turn against him.
It's like, fuck him.
Yeah, right. Right. There ain't nothing to this guy. He's just an empty toga.
Yeah. I mean, you can be a dick up to a point.
Only up to a point. Well, it's got to be a mix. You can only be a dick when it's justified.
Yeah.
You're a dick to defend your supporters. You got to go because you're a threat to somebody else. We're taking you out of here. Guys, look. He's got to go because if we let this shit stand, we're all in danger.
Although I would argue that's not necessarily being a dick. If you have like a good, justifiable reason.
Yeah, but then they do something horrible to him. You know, they basically torture him.
Okay, so that's not really justifiable.
No. Well, the idea was to send the message out.
Send a message, yeah.
That if you betray the group, the gang, this is what happens. You know, and everybody else is like, yeah, fuck that dude. So you don't make enemies by doing it. You actually fucking
because everybody's
supporters.
Like, yeah. But you got to be real careful with that kind of shit because, like I said,
it's got to be called for.
It's a tightrope.
Yeah,
that you got to walk. But like I said, Genghis Khan seems to have been very, very good at doing that. Very good at doing that.
Yeah.
He did command a lot of loyalty. I will say that.
Yeah, that's why you told me that he betrayed some people who he said he wasn't going to kill because there had to be a justification. Everybody else would have been like, yeah, fuck those dudes. It had been something like that.
It was probably something like
because
that.
if you were to fuck over dudes who didn't deserve it, that would get out.
Then eventually, and even your friends would be like, bro.
We can't trust him.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying.
Like, what if we do something to make him mad? Then he's going to, like, fuck us over.
Exactly.
Yeah. You can't just, like, do stuff without any
You got to be strong, but you got to be fair. And predictable.
Or, like, people around you are going to turn on you.
Right. If you're unpredictable or wily, they're going to say, man, I'm not safe around this dude.
Well, yeah. I mean, and justifiably so they will say that. So, so whatever the story with the guard was, the guard did help him escape, and he got away. Like, he took the collar off him, and he got away. Now, at this point, he goes back to the dad of his betrothed, Berta. And apparently the dad, Desechin, was like super glad to see him. It's like, I thought you were dead. Like after all of the being abandoned and all the kidnappings and whatnot that we've heard about. So it's like, here he is. So he's 15. He's almost 15 years old. So when he gets to 15, which was the age of majority then, he was allowed to marry his betrothed.
That's astounding because at this point Temujin's got nothing to offer this guy.
Yeah.
His dad, Temujin's dad's dead.
His dad's dead, yeah.
So really,
but he still honored the
agreement. Which means that he's a man of honor.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't have to.
He didn't have to. He'd go, well,
maybe he liked the kid.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, you're cool and shit and cool and all, but your dad's dead, your power's gone, and fucking I'm gonna marry my daughter off to a dude who's got power.
To somebody like
that's normally what would have happened.
Well, yeah. So, fair play to this guy. He did honor the agreement.
Sound like a good dude, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe there was some kind of maybe that was like a really bad party foul if you didn't honor an agreement like that. Like, even if circumstances intervened and it's like, their fortunes had fallen or whatever. It's like, but you still promised.
Could have been that he considered Temujin's dad almost like family. That maybe they had done each other solid so much.
I think that's probably what it was. It seemed like I said, I don't know a huge amount about the history, but it did seem like they had enough of a relationship. It's like that that he wouldn't have fucking.
And you can spin it to where this kid knows that I got nothing to gain from this, so if I allow this marriage to go through, he'll be fucking loyal to me.
Yeah.
For the next 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
This might be a good investment.
Yeah.
You could look at it that way too.
Well, and I guess it ended up working out well for him because, look what happened.
And he probably lived out the rest of his days fucking in luxury when Temujin started making all the money, huh?
I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what happened to his father-in-law.
How long he lived, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure what happened to his father-in-law.
Yeah, but he took care of his daughter, though.
Yeah.
Right.
So they went through with the marriage, and then they went back to Temujin's camp. Now at this point, Daesechin had a wife named Khotan or Chotan or something like that, and she gave Temujin's mom a sable coat, like, for a present, which was a big fucking deal, because, like, sable was, like, one of the, it's a fur, you know what I mean? And it was, like, super, super expensive. So, gave him that. And what Temujin did at this point, this was kind of interesting. And I guess this was okay to do, because I would have thought that this was a little gauche. But what do I know? But he took the cloak, and because he wanted a patron and an ally, because even at this age, when he's 15, 16 years old, he's already thinking strategically, like, who can I ally myself with, because he already wanted to, like, take over some shit. So he took this sable cloak, which was, like I said, a very expensive gift, and he gave it to a guy named Togrul, who was another Khan, like another leader of, like, another tribe called the Karate, I think is how you say it. Now, this guy, Togrul, had fought alongside Temujin's dad and was blood brothers with his dad. So he's like, well, I need allies, because, his family didn't have any. And he's like, so I'm going to give you this coat, and I want you to, like, hang with me. I want you to be my bro or whatever. And it worked, because at this point, like, Togul had a huge, huge territory in central Mongolia. But the thing about it was that he had a bunch of followers, but he wasn't super trusting of them, and was kind of, like, looking for more loyal people that would be more loyal to him, I guess. So he was really flattered and really appreciative of this gift, and he said, okay, so he brings Temujin in and says he'll be under his protection, and the two of them kind of became, like, really close friends. This would also not last, but, for now it's nice. You know what I mean? And at this point, because he did this strategic thing with this fucking coat, which, like I said, nowadays it doesn't seem like it's that big a deal, but I guess back then it was a big fucking deal. Like, he starts getting his own followers, because now he's powerful and he's under the protection of this more powerful, like, warlord, right? Now, remember a while back when I said that Temujin's dad had kidnapped Temujin's mom, Herlin, from the Merkits, another tribe. That had happened a while back, obviously, but the Merkits were still mad about it, evidently, because around 300 of them raided Temujin's camp at one point. And Temujin and his brothers who were at the camp, they got away, but Temujin's wife, Berta, was kidnapped. You know what I mean? Because they were like, hey, wife for a wife. Only fair.
Yeah. So
they took Berta back to their camp and married her off to the dude. Well, okay, so the dude she was originally... that we're talking about... okay, the dude that Temujin's mom was originally supposed to marry, and the dad had kidnapped, they married her off to... that dude was dead, but they married her off to that dude's brother. Okay. Is what they did. Okay, I know that's complicated, but yeah. That's
it makes sense, because he would have been the next in line.
He was the next in line, yeah.
Next to kin.
Like I said, they were like a wife for a wife kind of thing. Like, you kidnapped her. But like I said, but this date, it was like years ago. Right. But like I said, they didn't forget about it. They were still mad. They were still mad.
That was some serious political fucking shit back in the day, marriage. Mm-hmm. It felt that they got robbed out of a marriage that was sealed deal.
Yeah.
Temujin's dad fucking stole her.
Yeah.
Women were commodities.
They were. So they kidnapped Genghis's little wife there. And Temujin was pretty livid about it, actually.
Hell yeah, they got his wife.
Yeah, he not happy about it.
They're kind of spiteful, because they know she's not a virgin bride.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean? So they did that shit to hurt his feelings.
Yeah.
It was vengeance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as we will learn, don't do shit like this to Genghis Khan, because he's not going to be...
So this is where his name gets known.
Pretty much. And he's still like a teenager at this point.
Yeah, okay. All right.
So his wife gets taken.
I see how this is going to go.
His wife gets taken.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say, like, it seems like an overreact, but not really. I mean, like, if your wife got taken by somebody, I mean, you would think, like, you're gonna be fucking pissed, and you're gonna, like, I get it.
You're gonna be like this, like Anakin Skywalker and the Sand People.
I mean, like pretty much. Yeah. So Temujin, like, goes to Togrul, and his childhood friend Jabuka, who was actually in the interim, had come to, who was like the chief of his own tribe, and both of them said they would give him 20,000 warriors, like armies. Jabuka was going to command one of them, and they're like, we're going to go fuck him up.
20,000?
Well, actually, I think it was 40,000, because I think Jabuka and Togul said they'd each give him 20,000, and it's like, we're going to go get your wife back.
They had access to that many dudes? Those are huge armies.
Yeah. These were big tribes, like I said.
Man, okay.
So the fact that you could just be like, a few dozen. A teenage kid could come there and be like, hey, they stole my wife. And he's like, hey, here's 20,000 dudes. Hey, I'll also give you 20,000 dudes. Yeah. Let's go fix it. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
There had to be more to it than that. There had to have been political intrigue.
I mean, I'm sure there was.
Everybody else was like, yeah, that tribe right there, fuck those dudes.
Fuck them. Well, yeah, I'm sure that it's just because... That's the thing. At this time period, like I said, in Mongolia, there was no centralized anything. It was just like all these nomadic tribes. They all kind of hated each other. They were all constantly raiding, stealing shit from stealing women, stealing shit.
Yeah, well, a tribe was a nation.
Yeah, like
just
all
like
that kind of,
just like here with
all that kind
America,
of stuff. Yeah, it was all that kind of stuff. So they were just constantly at each other's throats. So anytime you had an excuse to like go get fucking revenge on somebody, or they'd done you wrong or something like that, yeah, you were gonna take it.
Probably some long-standing shit. About
it probably
was sheep. They've been doing.
And this was like the last straw.
Yeah, it's time. Could you be like, this is a good cause.
Yeah.
This is a good reason to go after them.
Yeah.
That's probably what it was.
And I will say that obviously I don't know how many market there were, but they got pretty soundly defeated. Like they pretty much got.
Well, if you can muster 40,000
dudes,
they
got pretty fucked up
in the 1200s.
That's
a huge army.
They got pretty fucked up.
That's bigger than a European army. I'm kind of like I'm not really believing that, but that's what the numbers say. I think it's an exaggeration. I'm trying to bet it was fucking 1,000 guys on either side. Probably 2,000.
I mean, maybe, but like I said. It's like, it could be 1,000 guys against 200 guys.
That's what I was thinking.
You know what I mean? Maybe.
I think it was probably more like that. 1,000 guys versus 400. 400 people, and then only half of them were combat worthy, Half of them were women, and the children. So it might have been like 200 dudes against fucking 40 guys who actually could fight. Yeah. That's just what I had imagined. But I wasn't there at the time. I'm looking at it from a Western European mindset. All those fucking medieval battles, like the Battle of Agincourt and shit, France versus England. That only was like a couple thousand dudes. That was like 2 rock concerts fighting.
Yeah, like if you saw it like happen in a field, you'd be like, big fucking deal.
This is it. It's not like Soviet.
It looks like a street fight after a football game in Philadelphia or something.
Exactly.
Like, you know what I mean? It's like nothing. That's like, it's pretty funny to think about. But like I said, they were small numbers.
Yeah.
It's funny how much of history hinged on a couple thousand dudes like smacking each other in a field.
There were less people back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Less people back then, and
what's kind of funny about it.
Elite people for their time.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, or we wouldn't be talking about them. Like everyone would just forgotten all about them. You know what I mean? But however many dudes it was, I don't really know. But they go to attack the markets to get Temujin's wife back. And as I said, they pretty much routed them. It wasn't even like a contest. Problem was, I don't even know if it was so much problem. But here's what's kind of interesting about Genghis Khan, aka Temujin, is that when they got Berta back, I don't know how long she'd been gone, like how long she'd been kidnapped, because obviously it takes a while, like to marshal that many people and like go attack the shit and everything like that, and shit took way longer back then. By the time they got her back, she was pregnant, as you might imagine, because she had been married off to some other dude, and it's also, I saw some sources say she'd probably been like raped multiple times by many of the other people at the camp also. But the thing about it was that they're like, it's possible that it also could have been Temujin's child too. So I guess she wasn't gone long enough for them to determine. But the interesting thing was that even though she was pregnant when they found her, when they brought her back, and they weren't sure, like, if the baby was Temujin's or if it belonged to, you know, one of the kidnappers, Temujin was very adamant that it's like, this is my wife and this is my son. Like, he treated the son, whose name was Jochi, I think, treated him like his own, his entire life, and wouldn't let anybody question it. So I thought that was kind of cool, because I think he understood. I mean, obviously they all knew the score back then, but he understood that it wasn't her fault, and it very well could have been his kid, at least as far as I could determine with the timing or whatever. So it could have been his kid, it could have been the other dude's kid, but, you know, to his credit, to him, it didn't matter. She had the kid, and he raised it like it was his own son, and treated him like he was his own son.
That's just saying something for the dude. That's saying something for Temujin.
That's what I said. It's like, I mean, it could have been, they said it could have been his kid. Yeah. She could have been already pregnant when she got taken. They weren't sure. But it could very well have been the child of one of the kidnappers also.
He just cared for it. He knew that shit didn't count. He's just going to raise.
Well, like I said, he knew that it wasn't really her fault. She got kidnapped. You know what I mean?
So he was just going to go ahead and, whether it's not his or his.
And like I said, he wouldn't let anybody question it. This is my son.
Right.
You know, that's my wife and that's my son. Yeah. So, like, don't fuck around. So I thought that was kind of interesting, because, like, a lot of dudes would not do that. Like I said, I'm not saying he wasn't monstrous in other ways, but that's what makes him kind of such an interesting person, is that he had all of these kind of what you'd think would be like mutually exclusive attitudes, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I guess not. People are complicated. So yeah. So after this, him and Jamuka are still hanging out, and I thought this was kind of funny, because this was like a quote from the Secret History of the Mongols, and they were talking about how close friends these two were, so much so that they thought they should comment on it, that they slept under the same blanket. And I'm like, are they trying to say that the two of them were banging? Because it also turned out, because it's like, yeah, that could have just been, because I knew dudes' friendships were closer back then and blah, blah, blah. But even people, I don't even know if people at the time commented on it, but people in the book that was written only a little bit after he died said that people commented on it, and that his wife and his mom also commented on it. It's like, you guys are like a little, like, hanging out a little too much, and that's like a little weird. Can you like knock it off?
Well, if they commented on it, then yeah.
So it might have been weird for the time. Because the fact that it was commented on, that they slept under the same blanket, and that the wife complained about it, that would seem to suggest that maybe there was something going on.
Too much bromance.
Something going on. Yeah. I thought it was funny because this was mentioned on a documentary that I saw about it, and somebody in the comments said, what do you mean, Temujin and Jamoka went like all Brokeback? And I was like, yeah, it does seem like Brokeback Mountain.
It's possible.
I mean, it wouldn't shock me, but they were very, very close friends.
Alexander was like that.
Yeah.
What was his boyfriend's name? Ephesian? I forgot his name.
I don't remember offhand.
Yeah. But that was a Greek thing.
Yeah.
You know, love between men was more pure than it was between a man and woman, because
women were inferior.
Well, I think it was because it was between equals.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
It was between equals, and I think they were implying it wasn't sexual; it was intellectual.
I don't buy that for a second.
No. I think they physically fucking got each other off.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might have been intellectual too.
But I think it was.
But I also think that they were fucking.
I think they interpreted it as above and beyond. Gender.
Like, this is too.
This is like
pure, like
this is
you
some
said.
fucking magical shit here.
This
man.
isn't like some
romance,
some gross lady's cooch.
Yeah,
or
it's
something.
not. It's not just all about pussy.
It's dick.
It's not hormonal.
Yeah.
This isn't hormonal love. This is spiritual shit between fucking awesome fucking superior males.
And sometimes we jerk each other off, you know.
Look, look. hardcore male supremacy always ends in fucking warrior homosexuality.
It does.
Warrior homosexuality.
But they always like have these funny kind of things where they kind of justify it, so it's not what it is because they don't want to like.
A lot of these fucking. I've been looking at the manosphere. A lot of these fucking incel dudes that are just fucking. I think off the charts. I fucking like. It's only a matter of time before those dudes start dating each other.
I wish they would. Maybe they'd shut the fuck up for a change.
Just fucking start. If
Just quit whining.
If you're gonna fucking be so fucking down on women and women are
if you hate us that much, go piss off and fuck each other. Then
women are just so difficult to deal with and so demanding. Go fuck a dude.
Yeah.
Go get you a dude just like you.
Yeah. And just quit crying about it.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Go work out.
Nobody wants to hear you crying.
Go work out. Go to the gym. Do all the shit. Fucking do all the self improvement shit. Go fuck some other dude.
Yeah.
The Greeks were doing it.
Yeah.
Fucking this shit's been going on for thousands of years, but that's what that leads to. You know.
No one's gonna judge you. Like I said, everyone will just be happy that you finally shut the fuck up and stopped whining. So
my advice is just learn how to deal with women. That's my advice.
We're really not that fucking difficult, okay? It's just we're really not.
Just learn how to deal with women. Yeah.
I don't really get why.
That's for me to say. You know, for me it was easy, but wasn't that easy.
I mean, we are different, but we're not that different.
You just gotta learn how to overcome fucking fear of rejection. You just gotta like be kind of indifferent. Like, okay, you know, just.
Yeah, I think women have to do that too, because women get a lot of rejection also.
Yeah.
So it's like you just kind of have to fucking roll with it.
So my advice to y'all, young women, stop trying to fucking stand at the finish line and pick the winner as he's coming across the finish line. A successful woman will marry a dude who doesn't have much, but she recognizes that he will have something one day, and if she works with him, they can build a good life together. That's how you have to look at it. Don't be sitting at the finish line waiting for a motherfucker.
Look at it more like a team sport.
Yeah, right.
Like you're looking for a teammate.
Yeah, some of these girls I heard their TikToks and shit. And they're just talking about, oh no, he's got to have 6 figures. He's got to be this. I'm looking at this girl and I'm going like, babe, no. A dude making 6 figures would not even look at you twice. Okay, fucking dude that has a lot of money also comes with a lot of other shit. He's got a lot of options, and you're going to be at the bottom of it. You know, the best thing that you can do is find a guy who's like you, and y'all work together to fucking build a good life together. And he's not going to have.
That's what everyone should do.
And he's not going to have a lot when you meet him if you're in your 20s. Because all dudes in their 20s pretty much are broke. You know. You haven't been around long enough.
I mean, unless you come from a wealthy family or something, but like you said.
Yeah, and those dudes aren't marryable.
Yeah.
Yeah, why would they marry?
Well, and I wouldn't really want to anyway, because they tend to be douchebags.
If you're a real rich dude...
They tend to be really entitled.
If you're a real rich dude from a rich family, just born with a silver spoon in your mouth, getting married is not in your advantage. It's more in your advantage to stay single, just fuck all these women, and maybe get married when you're in your 50s, 40s.
When you're too old for women to look at you anymore.
Yeah. And he's like, fucking, no, you're like 40, and you're like 40, and you get a girl who's like fucking 25. They do it.
All right, so however close Temujin and Jamoka were, we can speculate as to whether they were fucking or not. It's like, I don't know. They were blood brothers and whatnot. However, as in many relationships of this type, it didn't last. No one's entirely sure what led to this rift, but it was a pretty big one. So what happened, the story goes, is that the two of them, because like I said, they both had their armies and supporters and everything, and they're camping out in this field, or they were marching and they were going to camp in a field or something. And Jamuka, reportedly, said some kind of sideways comment about the camping spot that Temujin had picked. Like some kind of bitchy thing, I'm imagining. And at this point, Temujin's wife, Berta, says, man, we need to cut this motherfucker loose. I'm sure she didn't say it in those words, but I think that's what she meant. Yeah, you guys need to just like... And keep in mind that, according to most reports, Berta was maybe not happy with how much time her husband was spending with his best friend, and was kind of like looking for a reason to get rid of him.
Getting
Perhaps.
Getting jealous of that.
Well, yeah, maybe he was. Yeah, like I said, maybe he was just kind of like hanging out with him all the time. It's like,
he was cock blocking.
Yeah. And she's like, look, I'm not getting any. It's like, it's just like a dude playing video games all the time. It's like, Jesus Christ, man, what the fuck? with his bros or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like that. So she got sick of it. I don't know. I don't know what the situation was. Obviously, I wasn't there. But she's like, yeah, we need to cut that motherfucker loose. And the story goes that so he says something, and then he's like, okay, well, maybe we should camp here. But then Temujin keeps on walking, like ignoring him. And Jamuka's like, what the fuck? Like, you know what I mean? And he's just like, what? Hey, I thought we were gonna... And Temujin just keeps on going. And then he turns back like that, and then he sees that a bunch of his own men are just gonna, well, let's go with him. And they kept following him too. And the thing about it too is that a bunch of Jamuka's men were also following him. Like, we're going with this guy. You know, this dude's like a loser or whatever. I'm sure there was like some kind of greater context, but nobody is entirely sure what the lead up to this rift was. Because it was a big one. Like, it ended up being like pretty significant. So, because when you say it out loud, it's like, oh, he just ignored him. Like when he made some kind of bitchy comment about his campsite. That sounds dumb. But that's the thing. It's like anything like that. It's never just that. That's always just like the little...
That was a straw that broke
the straw that broke the... Yeah, that's like... He's been putting up with like some bullshit for like a long time, and finally he's just snapped. You know what I mean?
Victor just
like
showed
that.
up.
Well, hey.
Yeah, you showing up when the gay intrigue is happening and fucking with...
the gay intrigue.
With Genghis Khan, young Genghis Khan, and his fucking boy, who's fucking taking all the time away from Genghis's wife. Too much fucking bromance going on. She got mad.
It's like, will you guys just stop like stroking each other's cocks for 5 seconds?
And then he got bitchy about the campsite location.
Yeah.
And fucking she told her husband, she's like, we have to get rid of this dude.
And Genghis, like, to his credit, he's like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
fuck that guy.
Yeah. He's too demanding.
Well, like I said, it might be just... I remember reading this essay like a while back.
Yeah.
And this dude... And his wife had divorced him, and he wrote this essay, and I can't remember exactly what the title was, but it was something like, my wife divorced me because I left the dishes on the sink or something like that. But the upshot of the essay was he finally understood that she didn't divorce him just because of that. It's like, that was the last fucking straw.
Yeah.
It's like he had done all of this shit over years and years, and she had just put up with it and put up with it and put up with it, and finally she's like, it was just a little thing, it seemed like at the time, but to him he was completely blindsided because he hadn't heard her, like all the complaints that she had made in the years prior to that.
In case you missed it, Victor, fucking young Genghis Khan was sleeping under the same blanket as Jamuka. Everybody was like, and even fucking Temujin's mom is like, what the fuck is going on with these two? These two. What is that? This shit.
Like I said, I don't know. Like somebody in the comments
sounds
says,
like King David. It sounds like fucking Alexander the Great. They all had that phase.
They all had that. Yeah.
They all had that phase when they were young, where they had this
man
crush with some other young dude who was
it was
trying
their
to dominate all the
experimental
time.
phase. It's their experimental phase.
I think it was because it was between peers. It was between guys of the same basic rank. So, and I think it was mostly friendship, but then that shit might, I don't know.
It might like shade
started
over.
to go over, and then people are like, what the fuck?
Like I said, we're like really close friends,
Yeah.
Every now and then, like, why is your hand on my cock? I don't know.
Then they got to snap them out of it. It says, be a man. You got you're married.
Yeah.
You got a fucking empire to run. That kind of shit. Although fucking Alexander was like, no, it's all right. I can fucking run a whole empire, invade the fucking India, and do all kinds of shit. Even get married, and I can still have my fucking my boy.
Yeah.
You know. I don't remember exactly how that ended.
Victor says history class made me gay.
History class.
And also he said bros with benefits. I think that's probably what this situation was. I think. And like I said, I was going to say even at the time, but technically the book came out like after Genghis Khan died, so it wasn't really at the time. But even people at the time were kind of like thought it was a little weird.
Thought it was weird. And in these days, 1600 or excuse me, 1200s.
Yeah, this is
way out in the fucking
this is
east.
late 1100s.
Late 1100s.
Late 1100s.
There would have been no concept of gay culture. They wouldn't even know what that was. They just knew that fucking some dudes did shit like that, and that's weird. What the fuck?
They might not have been as weirded out as we think.
I think
it might have been a lot more common.
I think it was, but they probably said that's not right. They said I think they would.
No babies are gonna happen.
Yeah. They were like, you're not supposed to do that.
What are you doing? Don't put it in the butt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Romans were very adamant about that shit. Say a real man never takes the female position. He doesn't allow himself to be penetrated. He can penetrate another dude. That makes him the bitch. Okay. It's like some out of prison.
Yeah.
Who's ever on the receiving end of that shit, you the bitch. And they were always worried about the emperor taking it in the ass, because that meant that he wasn't an emperor. It meant that he was an empress, and the dude fucking him was the emperor, because that was just the way Romans thought. They're like, who's in charge here?
Yeah.
They couldn't handle that.
It's always just kind of like everyone that I know that's ever been in a lesbian relationship. It's like they always have some clueless straight dude ask them like, "Who's the man?"
Yeah, who's the man in this? Yeah.
No.
Who's giving the orders? Right.
That's not really how it works, but okay.
Yeah.
But
well, that's the way.
That's kind of well. Thank you for like clarifying how closed fucking minded you are. That you can't think outside.
Well, it was
box.
the traditions of the time.
No, I know. No, I'm talking about modern era. I'm not talking about back then.
Yeah. Galabala was taking it up
like
the ass.
Like people back then, like I'm not going to give them a pass because they didn't know it, but they didn't really know anything.
Emperor Galabala was like gender bending. He's taking it up the ass and shit. But he was also considered to be kind of foreign, like a foreign emperor. And the main thing against him was like, wait a minute, hold on. If he's now a woman, then that means he's not emperor. That boyfriend he's got is the emperor. So who's issuing the commands? And they eventually started glitching out, and the Praetorian Guard fucking strangled him to death and threw him in the fucking...
Because that's all they know how to do.
He was a bad emperor, though. I
know, but I'm just saying, something made us uncomfortable. Let's just kill them.
Galabala's mom put him on the throne through assassination.
Yeah, I know. That was very common.
And she really wanted to run the empire. He was a puppet, But that's just the way the thinking of the time. Somebody had to be the man.
Yeah. That's just kind of funny.
Well, it didn't have constitutions and shit. There was no constitution.
I know
nothing like that. It was more like the mafia.
I know. It's just it's funny to us in the modern era.
Yeah.
Although some people still absolutely think like that.
It's very human, very tribal.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't get that, I guess, but maybe I'm from Mars or something. But yeah. So no one is quite sure, like I said, what led up to this rift. It had to be something significant. It wasn't just the campsite thing, obviously. And the fact that a lot of Jamuka's men went with Temujin. It could be that they just perceived him as the more powerful leader, or that he was going to go farther or whatever. And so they're like, hey, I want to get on the winning side like right away. No one's entirely sure. It's like a pretty odd kind of story. But that's apparently what happened. Now, there was kind of a thing, too, where, remember Togul, the guy that he had kind of first allied with by giving him the sable coat, you know what I mean? Now, there were rumors, stories, that Togul's son, whose name was Sengam, was jealous of Temujin getting more powerful, and he was going to assassinate him. Now, Togul, his dad, even though he was, like, supposedly best buds with Temujin / Genghis Khan, was eventually kind of brought around to his son's way of thinking, evidently, and started kind of, like, being a bitch to Temujin for some reason, even though, like I said, they were kind of best buds before. And Temujin eventually found out about this and ended up defeating the son and, like, all of the people that were kind of with him and stuff. And the thing about it, too, I think one of the things that caused the rift, particularly between him and Togul, was that Togul wouldn't... Like, he had a daughter, and I guess Temujin wanted to marry his son, Jochi, the first son from that could have been the rape baby.
Yeah.
Or could have been his baby from when his wife got kidnapped by the other tribe. He wanted to marry the son off to one of Togol's daughters, like as a just kind of solidify the alliance. And Togol didn't want to do that. And that kind of that was like a huge, like I said, kind of a party foul. And so Temujin got kind of pissed off about that. And so they kind of parted ways. There was like a big conflict between the two of them.
He didn't want to marry his daughter to the kid because the heritage was...
I'm not sure if that's why. Or I'm not sure if it could have been both things, because I kind of feel like Togol was kind of getting influenced by his son's hatred of Temujin. And I think his hatred of Temujin was mainly jealousy.
Right.
That's at least from what I read. So, but it seemed like he was kind of poisoned by his son's ideas. So maybe it could have been his son's hatred of him that was causing that. Or it could have been, like you said, the disputed lineage of Jochi, who, like I said, they're not really sure if Temujin was the dad or if he had been fathered by one of the, rapists or one of the people that had kidnapped her, like from the Merkit tribe, because nobody was sure about that. So maybe that could have been it. But like I said, it could have been both things, possibly. Although, the fact that the fatherhood was disputed was probably like a big factor, I would imagine. Okay, so there was also another tribe called the Naimans or Naimans. And Jamuka actually ended up kind of throwing in his lot with them, like this other tribe. Now, Temujin went and kind of tried to like attack them and did his thing where he's just kind of like, hey, I'm going to wipe you guys out unless you submit to me or whatever, but they would not surrender to him, although a lot of them did actually side with Temujin in the end. Now, in 1201, Jamuka was actually kind of elected or appointed, I guess, their leader, or Gur Khan, they called it. And the fact that he was given this title as like the leader of this tribe, that seemed like that was the final nail in the coffin. Like, so him and Temujin were like not friends anymore after this point. And so Jamuka gets like a whole bunch of tribes to oppose his former friend / possible Brokeback lover.
Brokeback.
You know what I mean?
All this Brokeback shit.
But yeah, but before the kind of big final conflict, like a lot of Jamuka's generals actually abandoned Jamuka, including Subutai, who would end up being Temujin's or / Genghis Khan's most famous general. So he was actually originally with Jamuka but left. So they had a bunch of fights with each other, but Jamuka was finally captured in 1206. Some shepherds got him, and they turned him over to Temujin. Now, according to most stories I heard, Temujin like pretty much wiped out all of his armies and all of his loyalists and stuff like that. But because he still had some lingering feelings for him, I guess, because it was his childhood friend, he said, look, I wiped out all your shit and everything like that, but I'm going to spare you. You know what I mean? Like, if you'll be friends again or something like that. But Jamuka said, no, kill me. Which was kind of badass, gotta say. He's like, no, I just, kill me, but give me a noble death. Which means don't spill any blood. Like, don't cut my head off or anything like that. And by all accounts, Temujin did that. I've heard differing accounts of how they killed him. I've heard that they just, like, stomped on him or broke his back. I've also heard accounts of they just smothered him with a carpet. Like I said, they killed him, but they didn't spill any blood. It's a loophole.
Guarantee the truth is hidden. It's all stuff that was made up afterwards.
But another thing that I heard, too, was that Temujin was so... I mean, this was still his best friend, even though they'd had, like, a huge falling out. A lot of the sources said that he couldn't watch him being executed.
Yeah.
Like, he was there, but he turned his head away. Like, he didn't want to see it. Which I guess, that's kind of understandable, I guess. That was his best bud. You know what I mean? But he did get killed.
They were just dying by the ways of the steppe.
Yeah.
Living and dying by the steppes.
That's kind of the way it fucking goes.
Yeah.
So yeah. So after the Naimans were defeated, largely with the help of Subutai, who, like I said, would go on to become Temujin's greatest general. Pretty much that left Temujin as the last man standing. He was kind of the ruler of the Mongol plains. So at this stage, it's 1206, and Temujin has united all of the warring tribes of the Mongol steppes under one thing, which has never happened before, obviously. So yeah, I mean, that's, you know, kind of big deal. So in 1206, they have like a council meeting of all the Mongol chiefs, and he is acknowledged as the Khan, the ruler of all the consolidated tribes. And he is given the title Genghis Khan. Nobody knows exactly what that means. The most common thing that I've heard is it means like universal ruler or something like that. I mean, they usually called a ruler a Khan. So we know what that means, but nobody knows what the Genghis part or the Chinggis part means.
It probably means great.
Yeah, but like I said, they
like
think it means universal.
Universal.
Like universal
That's
ruler.
bigger than great.
Well, yeah,
That's
because like I said, he united
Yeah.
all of the tribes, which had been warring for centuries and centuries, and he got them all to go get along. Well, I don't know if they got along, but you know what I mean? Like, he kind of ruled them all under one thing, under one umbrella.
It makes sense to me.
Which, like I said, had never happened. So, I mean, most historians say that
leader.
they think that that's kind of what that means.
Yeah.
So yeah, and by all accounts, he did establish a kind of, I'm sure it wasn't like super peaceful or anything like that, but better than it had been. At this stage, at least from what I read, the Mongol nation, about 200,000 people, and about 70,000 soldiers. So here's the thing. I think at this stage, now that he's the man, he's starting to think, well, hey, shit, I did that. Let's go bigger. You know what I mean? What else is around here that we can fucking take over?
Yeah.
So the Mongol Empire at that stage, in 1206, when he was made the Khan, on the west, they were bordered by the Xia dynasty. East and south was the Jin dynasty, that was the rulers of northern China at the time. And so they decided, well, maybe we'll kind of go in that direction. What an interesting thing at this time period that Genghis Khan did was that he was trying to, again, I guess in the way that he was trying to unify all the tribes and try to discourage all of the infighting that had been going on for all of this time. So he passed like some kind of laws, like to try to forestall that. Like I said, he kind of was more into like meritocracy, rather than inherited titles.
Yeah, because you're going to get weaklings if you do that.
So he kind of abolished that kind of thing. It's like that succession kind of thing where, you know, your title or your birth like has to do with.
Yeah, England and France proved it. You could have a great leader, a king or something, and then all of his sons be pieces of shit. Because they're not living in hard times. They're living in fucking easy times. And they're fucking pampered. And they can't handle hard times. So you need to recruit from the bottom, basically. People that can fucking get it like they live.
That can get shit done.
Shit. Yeah. You're right.
He did seem, like I said, as monstrous as some of the stuff he did later was, he did seem to be very egalitarian in that way. Like, he was just very, like, he didn't care where you came from. Like, if you could do the shit
then you were the
and
man.
you were loyal to him, then he didn't, then it was fine.
He recruited talent, new talent, always.
Yeah, he was real into that.
It doesn't really go along genetic lines.
Yeah.
Because the environment changes.
Well, and like I said, especially within royal families, which tend to interbreed a lot, it really doesn't work out.
Interbreeding
in the long term.
Interbreeding and living lives of luxury and privilege doesn't fucking make leaders for hard times.
Or people that have any
Grit.
concept at all of how normal people live.
Yeah, no, they become elites.
That too.
Yeah.
Like they don't,
no.
they don't live the way normal people live.
Nope.
They're completely like in a bubble.
Yeah, they're bubble people.
So it's not the people you aren't running shit.
No.
So another thing that he forbid was the selling and kidnapping of women, which was probably personal because his wife got kidnapped.
Considered it probably a crime against humanity.
Yeah,
Shouldn't be doing that shit.
Which, yeah, I mean, you shouldn't, obviously, but it's like, it's nice that he...
That was way of life, though, for thousands and thousands of years.
It was. I mean,
pirates made most of in our era, basically 1700s. Fucking pirates, and even the Barbary Coast pirates made their whole living off of fucking selling people.
Yeah.
Through human trafficking. They'd fucking raid a ship, and they'd fucking take all the people. They'd hold important people hostage. Beautiful young women were sold off. They ended up being harems in the Middle East and shit. And everybody did it. All pirates, even fucking French pirates and Spanish pirates did it. That's one of the things where last time I went to the Disney World with her mom and shit here in Florida, because that's just up the street from us, really. I was going through the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, and they got rid of the slave auction scene. I was like, wait a minute. Because originally what was there is the pirates selling off all the women. And one of them was they up on the auction block, they had old hottie up there, and she's fucking crying, and she's in her thing, she's sniffling, and they're auctioning her off. And behind her's a big old fat girl who's just happy as shit to be married off to somebody. It was funny, you know what I mean? They were kind of poking fun at the whole thing. But that's actually the way the pirates were. Yeah. And these guys are like that, too. It was very common. People didn't marry for love.
Well, that's
too hardcore.
That's a relatively modern.
It's modern shit, right?
Are you saying you're too hardcore to have done that, Tom?
No.
Okay.
I was just saying on another show earlier, we were talking about fucking what our relationship would have been like in the Middle Ages, and it wouldn't be the same because I would have been something that was forced on you.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have chosen me. It was more like something like, you know what I mean? Fucking our parents forced us to marry. That kind of deal, and you didn't. And
it still happens in like some part of the world. I think even in like India and stuff like that, it's
India,
still
Pakistan.
Fairly common for at least like kind of upper middle class families to at least arrange marriage or at least attempt to arrange marriages.
Women's psychology kind of evolved, and I think it's all species, not just human women, but animal women, to where they get fucking Stockholm syndrome. Whoever's got a hold of them at that particular time, they might start throwing their allegiance towards that guy, even though she may have killed her earlier husband. But it's not really the same situation because the husband that got killed wasn't the husband she chose.
Maybe she didn't care about that.
She didn't really care.
And another thing too is that she might just be pretending to like you, and then she'll poison you later on or stab you while you're sleeping or something.
That happened too.
Because that also
Vikings were evidently very paranoid of that, of being poisoned.
So it must have happened a lot.
Yeah, because they had so many female captives.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens.
Yeah.
When you make people do things against their will, they're gonna stab you in your sleep. I mean, duh.
I don't know how common it was, but it was a common worry that they had.
Well, like I said, if they were that worried about it, then it probably happened.
The Romans were worried about it. If a slave killed the slave master in a house in ancient Rome, every slave in the house was killed, whether they were guilty or not. So you're holding all the slaves hostage. That's what you're doing. So, and fucking evidently this was not popular even in Rome. There was a riot once read about that broke out because a slave went crazy and killed fucking the master, and they wanted to put all the fucking other slaves to death. There was like 20 of them, women and children, and fucking they did it, and evidently the whole city fucking erupted into riots. Because it was very rare for that to happen, but even ancient Romans were like, "Man, that shit there, that's not right." But the Roman government and its traditions believed in basically ruling by terror, fear, you know.
Which only works up to a point.
Only works up to a point, but it worked for them for a long, long time.
But eventually, people are going to get sick of your shit.
Yeah.
And enough of them are gonna get
gonna
get sick enough of your shit to like fucking
Another
rub
thing
you
about
out.
Roman slavery is every now and then you'd get a new emperor in there and they'd just go, oh, by the way, all the slaves, they're all free. And then they'd have big celebrations and shit. But then they'd immediately be replaced by more German slaves.
Yeah, it's like, well, there was no stability. It was
Yeah.
just kind of like, when you can just come in and do shit on a whim, it's like,
Yeah,
that's not real great for people.
But they were doing that because by pressing the reset button. A lot of the slaves were fucking products of unions between Germans and Romans. So they were part Roman anyway. You know what I mean? So they'd been different generations. But it's just the way the ancient world was. It's not like it was today. They're a very different mentality.
So aside from forbidding the kidnapping of and selling of women, which is nice, like I said, he had 6 wives and a bunch of concubines, so he's not like any kind of fucking paragon or anything like that. But it's like, that's kind of nice. Also, probably understandably, you were not allowed to enslave any Mongol. And also would give you the death penalty if you stole someone's livestock, which seems a little like overkill, but I can kind of get it, because that was like people's like, lifeblood, you know what I mean? He also did a lot for, like I said, even though he did some horrible shit, which we haven't even really got into yet to a great degree, he did do some good shit. Like he did adopt a writing system, which they didn't really have like a codified writing system up to that point. Started doing like a census. He also had a big thing for like ambassadors, and he kind of did like the whole diplomatic immunity thing, and that was like inviolate. Like if you sent ambassadors to somebody, like nobody better fuck with them. Like that's kind of a big deal. Like, and we'll see how that went like later on when some shit went awry. And he was also, as I mentioned before, super, super tolerant of pretty much anyone's religious beliefs, which is at least from a European standpoint, especially in this era, was kind of unheard of. He had people in his armies that were just all different religions, and it was not an issue. Like, he didn't really care about it. He was a very spiritual person himself, but he seemed like he was okay. Like, whether he's like, we all got our own thing going on, and that's, like, he seemed pretty chill about that, which I thought was kind of interesting. He also eventually established a pretty good mail system, as in you could get letters from like one end of the empire to another like in a pretty decent amount of time, well, at least for the era. So, which again was kind of unprecedented for the time. So, as fucked up as some of the stuff he did was, he did actually do like some,
well, all that's practical innovation.
Some practical innovation.
Yeah. You need that to hold your empire together. You got to have communication.
Yeah.
You need to have radio.
Like I said, he just did it for pragmatic reasons. I don't think he was like had any great.
But he came up with a solution, like a Pony Express.
Yeah. It was like that. So after he had kind of unified Mongolia, and he started like looking outward, like I said, because he wants more shit. He wants to take over more shit. So the first campaign that he went on outside of Mongolia was against the Xixia kingdom of northwestern China. So they did a bunch of raids on them, and then did like a big battle like in 1209, and they showed up at the capital. Now the interesting thing about the Mongolian army, which we've kind of alluded to before, like I said, largely horseback, but they had other things like catapults and things like that. They didn't have a supply train. They had a bunch of reserves of horses like ponies and stuff like that, but you know how a lot of armies you had to travel, you needed a supply line, and like that could be attacked by your enemies, and it was like kind of a weakness, I guess. But they didn't really have that. Like every single soldier seemed like they traveled with everything they needed on their horse. You know what I mean? So they didn't have like all of these people like following behind them with a bunch more stuff. So they were a lot more...
Well, they had to have food and water.
They did, but it's like they were a lot more mobile, and they could move a lot faster than a lot of other armies at the time, because they had kind of had everything compacted, I guess.
They had a system.
They had a system.
They had some kind of system.
Yeah.
They must have lived off the land somehow, or had dried meat, some kind.
They
of
did. Well, yeah, that was a
meat.
big thing too.
You're right. Yeah, dried and cured meat. They had some kind of rations.
And they would even, and like if they ran out of food, they would just like drink blood from their horses and shit like that.
Yeah, you could do that. You can cut a fucking slit in the fucking horse's fucking carotid artery and drink out of there. Fucking Africans would do that out of like sheep and goats, and you don't kill it. You just take a little bit and you put it.
Yeah, don't do that because.
Right. Yeah. No. You gotta help the horse. You gotta ride the horse. So you're not gonna.
Yeah, I mean that was their whole. Like I said,
Right.
them and the horses. That was like a symbiotic relationship.
They may have also had emergency ways of finding food in the field.
Yeah, well, they were used to it. They grew up in the fucking steppes, which are like super inhospitable.
Yeah.
So they were used to just like living off the land and not having to carry a bunch of shit with them.
Yeah, getting hungry and jump down and eat some shit out of termites or something, eat an ant and stuff.
Yeah, they probably
did.
So they attacked the city. They did. One of their favorite tactics was to like kind of attack, and then they'd kind of get like the people inside the walls or whatever would like attack them, and they'd be like, oh no, and then like they'd do like a false withdrawal,
false retreat, yeah.
And then like later on they come back and go, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, that was they love to do that. They did that all the time. They did also try to flood the city, which didn't work, but in the end, the siege actually was effective, and the leader actually did submit to them.
When we were in the army, army infantry, doing the fake retreat and everything, we called that a probe. It's where you go and you test the enemy, see what it is that they can bring out to the fight. And then you get okay, and then fucking as soon as you fucking see what it is they're gonna fucking bring to the fight, you withdraw. And then you go back and go, okay, this is what they have. They got 30 fucking horses, 30 armed cavalry. They got a fucking catapult. They got fucking crossbows. So that's what they were doing. It's a type of reconnaissance.
Yeah.
Then you can make up a fucking plan based on what you saw. Then you go back with a real plan and a real attack. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, they did that a lot. That was like one of their favorite strategies.
Yeah,
actually. Because I kind of feel like they think like the people they were attacking were like, phew, they're gone. You know what I mean? So it's like, and then they could kind of hit them when they were like,
well, it was a probe though too.
Yeah,
they showed
because they could find out.
They showed what they had.
Yeah,
and what they're bringing to the battle.
And they're like, okay, now we have some actionable information.
Yeah, and then we'll come back and then make a new fucking plan and a real plan to attack them.
Yeah, right. Which is actually like a really good strategy.
Yeah, yeah.
But and obviously because they did that a lot and it was very effective because they owned a fifth of the earth at one point. So their next attack was against the Jin dynasty, which was in northern China at the time. Genghis was mad, I guess, because the ruler of the Jin dynasty had asked Genghis Khan to submit to him. And that was a bad thing to ask him to do. He was not going to do that. So he's like, well, let's go.
This is the emperor of the Ming dynasty?
The Jin dynasty.
Jin dynasty.
Jin dynasty, I said.
Okay.
So Genghis is like, yeah, nah, we're going to go take that shit over. So the campaign took 3 years, but they just kept at it. You know what I mean? Now I will note that the Mongols at this stage, as they were in a lot of their campaigns, were outnumbered. In some, I don't know if this was the case here, but in a lot of the places they took over, they were outnumbered like 2-1.
Yeah.
But they like I said, they were just better at it.
Well, they got better mobility.
That was a big factor.
You know, fucking, if you're against an enemy that's mostly static, they're in a fixed position defending it, and you can come and go as you please, you have an advantage.
And some of them, some of the cities and stuff thought that their fortifications and walls were like hot shit.
Yeah.
And they soon found out that not so much.
Yeah.
Not so much. Like they would only hold off like a couple of days, and then like the fucking Mongols would just take over.
You can wear down any defenses if as long as you know what you're doing and you have the shit that it takes.
Yeah.
Siege warfare. Best thing to do is just block off the roads. That way, no supplies can go in or out. They're gonna get hungry in there. They're gonna need water. You starve them out. Let them get weak, and then you attack. Or you negotiate.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Once they start getting weak, they'll probably negotiate.
What they did in this one case was that they would the Mongols would go around and like attack a lot of the other settlements like in the countryside, like around the city. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the refugees from there would go to the cities to try to get help. And obviously there was just kind of like overpopulation and they didn't have much stuff. And then it turned out that a lot of the Jin dynasty like officials and stuff like that started killing the peasants because like, look, we can't feed all of you motherfuckers.
Yeah, so it's like you're dividing the enemy.
Yeah, so you were kind of like doing the enemy's work for them at that stage.
Now you're making the guys you're fighting to look like the bad guys in front of their own people.
Yeah,
so you might be able to recruit some of them as help. That's another thing.
Yeah.
So look at
they did that a lot too.
You'd be like, they killed you because we attacked them. They're fucking sacrificing you. If you join up with us, we'll get rid of them.
They did that a lot
too. We'll pay you off. Yeah.
So in 1214,
but the fucking weaponized fucking what do you call it? Weaponized refugees. That's a great tactic. That's and bombard them with their own refugees.
Yeah,
and so they eat up all that food.
Yeah,
and then you lay siege to them.
Yeah,
and they weren't prepared. They're
like I said, it took a couple of years, but it's like they just kept at it.
Yeah, their siege.
What else did they have to do?
Yeah, their siege supplies couldn't feed all those fucking people, so they couldn't resist the siege for as long as they normally would have because they were overpopulated. That's a fucking great tactic. I mean, that can only come from experience.
Yeah, like I said,
I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have either. But like when I read that, I'm like, man, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
what a good idea.
You just fight skirmishes because you don't want to wipe that population out. You want them to run and go to the city.
Yeah,
yeah. So you just kill a few.
And then, like I said, their enemy from their point of view, like ended up killing a lot of those people anyway. So it's like I said, they're doing the enemy's work.
They're doing your work, but also they're turning the general population against the city.
Them. Yeah, so it's like a win-win.
Yeah.
So in 1214, the Mongols took over the capital of Zhongdu, which is now Beijing, a little city you might have heard of. And the leader, the Jin ruler at the time, finally capitulated. And he said he would hand over all kind of shit. Silver, gold, horses, silk, all kind of stuff. Now, so he made this agreement. He's going to give him all this stuff. But then he kind of reneged on it a little bit, at least in Genghis's point of view. Because he's like, okay, well, but I'm moving my little court south to this other city. And that made Genghis mad. Because he's like, that wasn't the deal. And so he took a bunch of the deserters from that place and added them to his army, and then he just fucking fucked up the whole entire city, which, like I said, is now Beijing, but at that time was called Zhongdu. So yeah, he was mad. So it was just completely sacked. Now here's an interesting thing. I had actually never heard of this. I think if you probably grew up in the Middle East, you probably have. But so there was an empire, which at its time was quite powerful, but is probably largely forgotten by most of the world today. And the reason it's largely forgotten today is because the Mongols wiped them off the fucking face of the earth.
Gone.
Like the whole entire fucking empire.
Yeah.
And this was and I'm sure I'm pronouncing this wrong, the Quorasmian Empire.
Huh.
Now this is an empire which at its time, like I said, quite powerful. It covered part of Central Asia, Afghanistan, and Iran. So what happened with this? I think what initially happened was that Genghis wanted to, or at least he was making... He wanted to make friends with this empire, or at least he was pretending to. I'm not really sure how it really went. This happened in 1219. So what happened was... he tried to make peace with them, and like the guy apparently like shit on him, and Genghis did not like to be disrespected, even in a minor way. So if you so much as like dissed him, just said something sideways, he'd be like, all right, we're gonna wipe out your whole fucking civilization. A little bit of an overreaction, I guess, but he was mad. So 1219, the Mongols go after this one of the major cities in this empire, which was called Otrar, or something like that. Otrar. These names. It's like the more I drank, I'm like, oh my god, it's like I can't pronounce this shit. Where Ochar is in present day Kazakhstan.
Okay.
Now, the guy that was the governor of Ochar, his name was Inalchuk. And Genghis did not like this dude at all. I guess he had, like, again, dissed him in some way. What had happened was that about a year before the attack, as I said, Genghis was trying to kind of make peace with this. So we were going to do a trade. So the Mongols had sent a caravan of about 450 people and a diplomat to Ochar to, like, hey, you know, we'll trade. Like, because they had, like, some pretty fabulous, like, fabrics that were famous in the area, and he wanted some of those, and he was going to give him some shit and everything like that. So he sends this thing. And for whatever reason, the governor of this town slaughtered every single one of the people that he sent there. No one's entirely sure why. Historians are pretty sure they're like, maybe he thought that it was like spies, which is possible because Genghis was a big advocate of spies. And most of the contingents that he sent to various cities did have spies in them. So that wasn't a crazy thing to think. But that's really the only reason they can think of. It's like, why would you kill like 450 odd people that supposedly just came to you like for trade and like for a peace negotiation, and he just wiped them all out?
He must have heard of Temujin's activities before.
Maybe, and he's just like, I don't trust
like,
that motherfucker.
These dudes attack.
Yeah. And he just thought,
bad decision. Very bad.
Well, yeah, it's like, it's probably better. Yeah, because
it'd be better to talk to him first.
It didn't end up good.
Right.
You know what I mean? It didn't end up good. So it's just kind of like, if they come to you like in peace at the beginning, you've heard about the Mongols. It's like, maybe you should at least try to be like, yeah, bro, like let's be buds. If you like, no, fuck that, and you kill all their people, that's gonna go badly.
No, I would have been like, okay, who's this Temujin guy? What is he offering? What's the deal? Are you guys trying to take over or what? What is the deal? And you probably would have got an honest answer out of Temujin. Yeah, you're gonna be part of the empire. Just just fucking be loyal to me. And,
just do what you want.
Just let the shit ride. I don't care. Just give me tribute. And then what do I get out of that? Well, I'll give you defense out of that. Okay, so you're gonna become my army. Good, yeah. But you're gonna contribute too. You have your own local army. That's okay. So you're the federal government, is what you're saying. Yeah. And then you go, okay.
I mean, you could have come to terms.
Okay, yeah. Maybe we can work something out like that. You know.
But that's not what happened.
You got any daughters or anybody like that? I can marry my sons to. We'll have this will be a real thing. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Inalchuk did not want to do that.
Yeah.
Inalchuk sees these 450 people showing up with gold and silver and silk and stuff like that in exchange for some of their shit.
No.
And he's like, no, I'm just going to kill them all.
Yeah, bad idea. Because if they're coming at you with gold and silver...
It was a real bad idea.
If they're coming at you with gold and silver and shit like that means they want a relationship.
Yeah.
And you might want to fucking... And if this dude's got a history of fucking people up, you
even more so. It's like, why do you want to piss off a dude like that?
Yeah, you may want to have a fucking powwow and fucking work this shit out like gentlemen.
Yeah.
That's what I would have done.
But no, for whatever reason...
Is there any way you're going to magnify my power? That's how I would.
Yeah, like you could have come to some kind of mutually
we'll do this
agreeable.
Shit. We'll do this shit together. We'll take some more shit all together.
But no,
that's how you do it.
For some reason, this dumb motherfucker.
Ego.
I guess
sounds like ego.
He just had like 450 fucking people just killed. All of them.
When you have some gangsters like this, you want to be on a team.
Yeah.
You want to at least talk about it.
Now what?
Nothing.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying.
I thought you were gonna.
I just got a feeling this dude doomed his people.
He did, like I said, because as I mentioned before, in a bit of a spoiler alert, this entire empire was wiped off the map.
Yeah.
Not just this city, the whole empire.
Yeah. He made an example out of them.
Wiped off the map.
That way everybody else could see
with extreme prejudice.
Yeah. Dumb.
It was dumb.
Dumb. He used them
because, as I mentioned earlier, like you might have been in the bathroom. But Genghis was real big on ambassadors. And he thought, at least according to everything that I read, that ambassadors were kind of like inviolate. Like, you were not allowed to do anything. Like, look, if I'm sending an ambassador, you're sending an ambassador to me.
Well, that's how it is.
Yeah, like, you have to be nice to that person. It's like, we're trying to, like, agree on something. And it's like, so if you do something bad to them, then that is a huge, huge...
Yeah.
That is an act of war, essentially.
Yeah, and that goes even into European history. White people thinking. Fucking the flag of parley.
Yeah.
When you, under a white flag, go to fucking talk to another army... That shit's inviolate. It's a truce. You know what I mean? Fucking, you cannot kill the messengers.
Yeah.
They're trying to give fucking
they're trying to, like, come to, like, an agreement or...
Yeah. Right.
And it's like, to do that, that's like I said, that is a huge...
Stupid.
Yeah, and it's also super dumb.
So, dude's stupidity got his people wiped out and erased from the fucking face of the planet.
Good job, bud.
And then fucking Temujin used that as an advertisement of don't fuck with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
He should have seen that shit coming. That's a bad leader.
One person,
Yeah.
a camel driver,
Yeah.
survived the massacre.
Yeah.
And he got word back to Genghis. Genghis was not happy at all. But I will note, like I said, so this is why I don't think, even though he did monstrous things, which we'll talk about later, he did give people a chance because he didn't immediately go in there and fuck shit up. In fact, he sent two diplomats, two Mongol diplomats and a Muslim diplomat to the city, to the Sultan, and he says, hey, look, like, he wanted them, giving them the message, hey, your governor of this city killed all of my dudes and that was fucked up. I want him arrested and punished. Like, he apparently, like, he tried to go about things the right way. Okay? Is what I'm saying. So, like I said, he wasn't crazy. He was just trying to do shit the right way. So he did that. So he sent them with a message. Now, the Sultan was apparently as big of an idiot as the governor had been, because he cut the head off the Muslim diplomat, and then the two Mongolian diplomats, he cut their beards off, which was like a big fucking deal. And then he sent the two Mongolian diplomats back with the head of the Muslim diplomat back to Genghis. Like, nope. So yeah.
Add an insult to injury.
Like I said, Genghis tried to fix it.
Yeah.
He tried to go over that governor's head and sent 3 diplomats to say, hey, arrest that guy. Why did he kill my ambassadors? Like, why did he kill my dudes?
Yeah.
And the Sultan did that shit. And at this stage, Genghis is like, oh, it's on.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So we're going to fuck these sultans up.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I mean, fucking rude, right?
Arrogant.
Like I mean, yeah. Now...
Well, they felt secure in their power. They thought they had they probably thought...
Well, shows what
thought
they
shit
know.
all wrapped up.
Shows what they know.
A mobile force is very dangerous, especially one that can fucking...
Well, it's
live off
terrible
the land.
because these assholes, like the governor and the Sultan, like, they got thousands of people killed because of their own fucking arrogance.
Yeah.
Just because they thought they knew better, and they're just like, oh, this motherfucker.
These guys are Muslims, though, so they're saying they probably are like, well, they're probably looking at Temujin going, yeah, but you're not part of any Islamic empire, and you see, we're more with the Muslim side of things. We can't have this, but it got him killed.
They even killed the Muslim. They specifically killed the Muslim ambassador that he'd sent. They cut his head off.
Yeah.
And then sent the head back with the other 2.
Yeah.
So, at this stage, like I said, Genghis is like, well, I fucking tried, but fuck this motherfucker. Fuck this place. I'm scorched earth. I'm going scorched earth. So, they did a siege on Ochar. The siege lasted 5 months. Now, interestingly, it probably would have lasted longer than that, because it took them a while in there, but there was a dude on the inside who was a sub-commander for the army of Ochar, who, his name was Karacha. And he actually went over to the Mongol side and let them in. Like, he opened the gate. Because he was like, man, fuck these motherfuckers.
Right. He defected.
Yeah. So he let all the Mongols in. So the Mongols came in and killed everybody. Everybody. Men, women, children, pets. everybody. And here was the thing. Old Karacha, he thought, hey, I'm getting in good with the Mongols because this is obviously the stronger side.
They went, you're a traitor, and they killed us.
That's exactly what they did.
That's exactly what they
did.
You scumbag. Yeah.
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 So like, because him and his men, like, went over to the Mongols, like, hey, we good, right? We let you in. They're like, nope, shoop. Can't trust a traitor.
Yeah, they're
that's
like,
what Genghis did.
Yeah, like
he just killed them.
You betrayed your own people. Yeah, you're gonna die.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing: if a traitor will betray his people, he will also betray you at some stage. Yeah. So yeah, he's right. You can't trust them.
No.
Because they would flip on a dime.
That's an age-old fucking mantra. All armies know that. You can't trust any kind of traitor.
He's like, thanks for letting us in and all, but
yeah.
Sorry, bud.
Because usually what happens is that armies can't really control who's in their ranks because they don't have psychologists. Motherfucker's probably just a fucking abject sociopath, only cares about himself. And some of them guys do well in military systems and can end up in high rank. You don't want that dude in your ranks. He's a traitor to his own army.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, what the fuck is he going to do?
But you use him, but you don't fucking bring
Genghis
him into your army.
was very aware.
Yeah, you don't bring him into your army.
He's like, yeah, I'll use them as far as they're useful, but after that, I'm just going to fucking kill them because...
Yeah.
Like you said, they're going to betray you in the end. They betrayed their own people.
Yeah.
So it's like, we don't even know them. So, I mean, it's not dumb. That's just practical.
Yeah. There's some caveats. If the dude is related to you, that's something. Might be different. A guy in an army comes running and goes, oh, no, I don't want to fight. Y'all fucking, my dad was one of you guys. That kind of shit. I'm more with you, I just ended up here by accident. That's a different thing.
I mean, there's obviously
his identities, his ethnic identities,
sure.
His ethnic identities are different. That's not quite the same thing because he's in a group of people that are not really his people. But in this case, no, I don't trust that dude. You use him, and you're like, fuck you, dude.
Yeah, like I kind of
punish him for fucking treason.
Like I said,
punish him for betraying
I don't really blame
no.
Genghis for doing that.
Guarantee you, Temujin was. Thank you very much for helping us, but I got to bring justice. Okay, you betrayed your own people, and you got to be punished. That's probably how he told the dude. Just you can't betray your own people. I would never. None of my people would betray us. You gotta die. Yeah. All these people you killed through your betrayal. Yeah.
So the governor that had started all of this nonsense in Olchuk, he actually ended up barricading himself in one of the citadels in the city.
Yeah.
And he managed to stave off the Mongols for about a month.
Damn.
But Genghis was adamant the whole time. It's like, don't kill him. I want him alive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because he was mad. So they didn't. Like, his men did not kill him. And eventually he got captured. Now, the story goes that Genghis got this motherfucker and poured molten silver into his mouth, eyes, and ears to kill him.
Well, silver's money. So he must have thought for some reason the dude did what he did for money.
Or he just thought that would be a really fucked up and painful way to... And maybe slow.
It would be, but... They'd be like pouring dollar bills down somebody's throat.
Yeah.
There must have been something. It was symbolic.
Yeah. I mean, perhaps so. But like
symbolic.
I said, everything I've heard, it was like he poured... I don't know if that's true or not.
It might have been something made up.
I mean, that might be a story, but that's the story that went around, that's how he killed that dude. Like, by pouring like, silver in his mouth.
There was also a fucking story that Hernan Cortez and the fucking conquistadores poured molten gold down Montezuma's throat. It's not true.
No, that's not true.
It didn't happen. But that was just
a good story, but it's not true.
Just a story, yeah. He was killed by strangulation.
Which is pretty boring, all things considered.
Well, that was considered to be like a very soft euthanasia.
Yeah.
They could do it a lot worse than that. They put him on a pole in front of everybody, and they put a leather strip around his neck and just choked him to death. Which is, if you've ever been choked out, somebody put you in a chokehold, it's not a bad way to go. Nice and sleepy. You get sleepy.
Yeah, you just go unconscious.
Yeah.
Which, like, I don't want that done to me. I'm just saying that it's like, it's be better than being burned alive or drawn and quartered or something like that. Or, like, put in a thing with fucking fire ants or some shit. Or, like, fucking tortured, you know?
Yeah, and old Hernan Cortez, man, fucking had a great campaign. Fucking great military man.
private contractor. But I don't think I would have killed Cortez. I don't think I'd have killed Montezuma. You know, fucking. I think I would have tried to make peace with him after the little fucking civil war had happened and try to use him more as a puppet. But you know, that's just that. I think we already did a show on that, didn't we?
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'll write it down in case. But
yeah,
I thought we
that
did.
was a great show.
But
that's
really
great. That's
sure.
a great topic. Fucking yeah.
All right, so I still got a lot to
Okay.
go. So
Let
let's
me make
not.
another drink.
Yeah, so let's not
All right.
fart around too
I'll
much.
make this one a little bit weaker. I don't want you to get too fucking loaded.
Well,
We
you
can
know.
go get some microwave food down at Circle K when this is over too.
Oh, are we? Okay.
Yeah, don't you want something to eat?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's we haven't eaten much today, have we? I had a sandwich, but it was like fucking 8 hours ago. 10 hours ago. That was a long time ago. All right, so now that they rubbed that city out, they decided, hey, we're just gonna fuck up the whole entire empire. Like I said, you do something like that to Genghis Khan, he's just like, fuck you, fuck your family, fuck your entire empire. They just wiped this empire off the map. Just went from city to city to city. And just fucking rubbed them all out, man. They did keep what they would do, and I think I mentioned this earlier, but like if there were people in the population that were, you know, carpenters or, you know, had useful skills, they usually kept those people. But anybody that was like soldiers, aristocrats, anybody like that, they just fucking wiped them out. Or they would use them as human shields when they attacked the next city. That was another thing they were real big on, because they figured that it was kind of like I said, they were real into like psyops. So they figured that if we come into the next city with the last city's nobles and stuff like in front of us, like it'll maybe make them hesitate. It's like, hey, that's our own people. We don't really want to shoot at them. Like it's, you know, bad for morale. So it was just like another little leg up. So they use that a lot. They use people as human shields a lot, like in a lot of their attacks. So yeah, and like I said, they use spies and all that kind of shit too, and misinformation. They were big on that. So the thing about the next city they came to, which I think was Samarkand, which I think was the capital of the empire at the time, if I'm not mistaken, he actually did the attack with two of his sons, whose names were Chagatai and Ogadai. Ogadai was the one that eventually succeeded him and made the empire like as big as it got. They attacked with about 10,000 men. Like I said, they used the people they captured from the last place as human shields. And they also, this is pretty cool, they would, you know, they had catapults. So they would catapult the heads of the people they killed in the last city into the next city.
Yeah.
They would do that too.
Now let me go ahead and fucking say something about catapults. Catapults are usually a misnomer.
Gotta pee.
Catapult is a Roman weapon. It means fucking pelt piercer, skin piercer. And what it really is, if you saw it, is a gigantic, mechanically operated crossbow. It fired a bolt that was about the size of a spear. It was like a Roman version of a cannon. And they were accurate. And they were very powerful. And like, you know, if you were to see an actual reproduction of one and what it could do, impressive, very impressive by today's standards. Especially if it hit something that was wooden, like a wooden building. That fucking spear or that bolt would go through that fucking wood, and then on the other end it would explode out like in fragments. It was very powerful. Then they had a weapon called trebuchet, which was a big weighted thing that would throw stones or any kind of fucking munition. It would throw it in a big arc over a city's walls. And somehow in English, the word catapult ended up being the thing that fucking lobbed it in the big arc. That's not what a catapult was. That was a trebuchet. A catapult was actually a fucking crossbow, a giant crossbow. So in this particular, what they're referring to here is not catapult. What they're talking about is trebuchet. Something that looks like a fucking jack with weights on one end, the other end a fucking
I don't know what you call the thing, like a big sling where you put a fucking payload and fucking boom, and it lobs it over the city walls. It's old fucking siege technology going back thousands of years. Probably goes back to fucking Archimedes. So they're talking about trebuchet. Yeah.
But this situation here was another one where they offered everyone the choice to surrender to them. And in this case, they did. I think there was about 100,000 people living in this particular city, although I don't know if that's accurate or not. And he said, and they did, but they killed them all anyway. And here's another thing, and they did this a lot too. Like, he would have all of his soldiers round up everybody, little kids, everything, in the city. And then he would try to count, like, figure out how many people it was. And then he would say to each of his soldiers, each of you has to kill X amount of people. And then they would just rub them all out. Yeah. They just rub them all out. Pretty much.
It's funny they had to tell them how many to fucking kill.
Well, I think that was an intimidation tactic.
Yeah.
Where they would round up all the citizens.
Yeah.
And then they'd be like, what the fuck is going on? Like, we surrendered. I thought you said that we would be fine. And then he'd be like, yeah, how many of you are there? There's like 1, 2, 3, like whatever. Yeah. There's 20,000 of you or however many. And then he counts his soldiers. And he's like, okay, each one of you has to kill this many people. Yeah. And then they'd take them out to a field and just fucking
as an ex-soldier myself, what that means is that the chain of command is giving you an order to kill, say, 10. That way they know they're all killed. But they would only do that if they knew that you weren't real apt on killing people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're giving you a quota. They don't want you going out there and just killing one old man and then walking back.
And then being like,
I did my killing. And, I'm done. I don't really want to kill anymore.
He's like, every one of you got to kill 30 people.
Right.
Or you don't get your...
That's because it's...
Or we're going to kill you too.
Yeah. So... It means that they didn't actually like what they were doing. That's what that means.
I would imagine. I mean, like I said, even back in these days when life was cheap, and I'm sure people were a lot more hardened to it. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's in most people's nature to just kill random ass people that aren't fighting them.
No. Especially when
actively.
When it gets down to like, you got some woman and she's shielding 3 of her little children.
Yeah, it's like I feel like 99% of people would be like, yeah, no,
most
I'm not.
Are like,
I'm not doing
I can't
that.
really do this. But they're giving you a quota. And I guarantee you the women shielding those little children were the last ones. They started with the easy ones to kill. Old people and grown people and shit like that, men. Yeah. And then they're going like, well, shit, man. I don't really want to... And then somebody else goes, dude, you got it, I got 3 more. Okay, look, I'll just get this one. That's what they're
Here, pick some that look like they won't be that fucking...
Look, kill the mama first. Okay, don't put her through this shit. It's like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's messed up.
Rough.
I can't imagine being in that situation.
Yeah, you got to imagine the situation of the dude with the fucking swords.
Yeah.
And they're like, man, I didn't really sign up for this. You know what I mean? Fucking, but they're like.
I mean, they kind of did, but they kind of did.
Soldiering is like hooking. It's something you got to do. It's the oldest profession.
Yeah, you don't like it.
You don't like it. It's just if without this, you're not eating, and you don't have any fucking status, and you're not fucking getting paid.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily mean you like this. Just like a hoe doesn't like sucking all these dicks. They just they got to.
That's what I mean. It's like most people don't. It's just like you kind of got to do it.
Right, yeah.
To get paid.
To get paid, right.
Which is kind of what was going on. Well, and they had the added incentive that if they didn't do it, then they would also be killed.
Right.
The thing about it,
turn on you.
Like you said, like with the carrot and stick thing, was that by all accounts, Genghis Khan was very, very fair. He divided all the spoils that because that was how they got paid. They didn't get paychecks or nothing, but they would take whatever they got, like from wherever they conquered, and by all accounts, he would divide it equally. Like he would take an equal share to all of his dudes.
Right. So he got paid what a private soldier got paid.
Yeah, they all got paid the same.
Which that means you're like, man, we're on board. We're all equals, man. That's my man.
That's in that way that was like pretty brilliant because
Right.
it's like it made it like we're all a team.
Yeah.
Like no one's getting more than anyone else.
Yeah.
Like we're all getting the same,
So
so
you're
we're
down-
all working together.
You're down there doing all the fighting. You don't feel as pimped out as much.
Yeah, because he's
We're all
doing it
making the
too.
same
He's
amount.
doing it too.
Yeah, he's doing
like even
too.
though he's given the orders, like he's still taking the same amount that they're taking.
Yeah, he's not gaining an inordinate amount of money over you. Like, fucking man, I did all the killing. He got 10 times what I got.
Yeah. So I think like he was pretty shrewd to understand that resentment would build up if he was routinely like taking more shit and not doing the dirty work kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But like because they were all being paid the same or they
Yeah.
were all taking the same share.
Yeah.
Like he did inspire like a lot of loyalty because people
Yeah.
would do all kind of shit for him. So there's that. So yeah. So like I said, now as we mentioned earlier, the Mongols, it's estimated, may have slaughtered around 11% of the entire world's population at that time,
Yeah.
which is a lot.
That is a badass army.
That's a lot.
Badass army with a great kill ratio.
Like I said, the most the conservative estimate I saw was 37 million
Yeah.
people. I've seen 60 million. Some people think that might be an exaggeration, but I don't know. Like I said, it was a long time and it was a pretty vast swath.
Let's say it's 50 million. 50 million rivals what an industrial civilization could do
Yeah.
in warfare.
And they're doing, I mean, obviously it wasn't just him. He had like massive armies.
Yeah. But it was all hand powered and horsepower.
Yeah, they were all doing it on
They were
horseback,
doing it by hand.
which is
yeah.
fucking crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy to think about. And the fact that they could run that, like, eventually, under his son and his grandson, because I think under his son is when it got to its largest, at least area-wise. The area that it covered was Russia, Ukraine, Hungary, Poland, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan,
Yeah, Kyrgyzstan.
Kyrgyzstan, China, Korea,
Yeah.
much of Southeast Asia, Persia, Syria, Turkey, India, and Iraq. So it went all the way from Asia, like all the way across, like into the Middle East. It was a huge, huge area. As I said, I believe it's under his son, it became the largest empire ever. Much larger than the Roman Empire, much larger than any other empire, like on Earth. And crazy. So, we were kind of alluding to this before, but it's like, he just seems like a fascinating character because even though he did all this monstrous shit, boiling people alive and pouring molten silver down their throats and
If he did that.
and shit like that, which, like I said, I don't know if he actually did that or not. It's
Probably, though. For the time.
I
For
mean,
the time,
that kind
probably.
of sounds like...
Making examples out of people for defiance.
Yeah,
So-
he was big on that. And
Yeah.
like I said, he was big on psyops. He was big on the reputation. He wanted, when he rolled into a new place, for his reputation to precede him. So that so they would surrender,
Yeah.
like, without any fuss.
You're trying to do without bloodshed,
Yeah.
if possible. But the only way you're going to do that is scare the shit out of people.
Yeah, and that's essentially what he was trying to do. So that's
Yeah.
why they did some fucked up shit.
Yeah.
By all accounts, like, when he did roll into a place, if people did surrender and they seemed like they were cool with it, like, he wouldn't kill everybody, but he did kill people after he said he wouldn't kill them, too.
Guarantee you that there was some
But there
shit
was
behind
probably
it.
a reason for
Probably
that,
reasons.
I would imagine. Like I said, not great. No one's condoning it. It's fucking terrible.
It's going to be some shit like he gets reports
But-
after the deal's done. They're like, man, these dudes that you made this agreement with, you can't trust them. They're going to kill you. We overheard them. Our spies overheard them. They're talking about they're going to fucking overthrow you and assassinate you.
Yeah.
We're going to have to kill these bitches.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're going to betray us. So it was going to be shit like that.
Yeah.
Something practical.
Like I said, he was a very pragmatic
Yeah.
man. Like, in a lot of ways, cold-blooded. I don't think he was psychopathic because he did seem to be capable of, loyalty toward his friends. By all accounts, he like adored his wife, Berta.
Yeah.
And he stayed with her until he died, and she was like his favorite. He had a bunch of other ones, but and like I said, he did seem to have some kind of what we would call like progressive values in a lot of ways. But he was also a man of his time, and he understood that, look, my goal is to conquer all of this territory, and to do that, you're going to have to break a few eggs.
You're going to have to fucking sign on. And if you don't sign on, we'll fuck you up. This is gangster mentality.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why gangsters have that mentality. It's the basic beginnings of what we would call modern government.
And it's kind of the
modern
same.
Government starts this way.
Yeah.
And then they start having things like laws and constitutions, and it gets more and more complicated and advanced on top of it. So, yeah, I think he's a good dude for his time. Oh yeah, he's a good leader for his time. If you were on his team, you'd probably be very happy to be on his team. He's achieving things that maybe other dudes aren't achieving. He's like, man, we're gonna take all these little bitty city states, and we're gonna put this shit into a fucking land, into a nation, and all these artists and all these scientists dudes and all these little cities, we're gonna fucking make badass statues, which that was a big deal back then. We're gonna have buildings people never see. Now, it didn't last though. It didn't last. As soon as he was dead, this shit started falling apart. If memory serves.
Well, his son
Yeah.
expanded it to its largest point.
Yeah.
And then his grandson, who was Kublai Khan,
I remember him.
kept it going too. But I think after that, it started kind of dissolving into like warring factions again.
Yeah.
So without him, they couldn't really keep it together.
Yeah, well, you're not talking about something that was, say, as advanced as the Roman Empire. With that, you had a Senate, you had elections, you had traditions. They didn't have a constitution, but they had other things that were kind of like constitutions. The Roman sense of fucking authority, authoritas. I think they call it authoritas, and which was authoritas was more kind of like weight. Like, you're a great man, and what I say, you do it, because I have authority. They had that instead of fucking, and it was all based upon traditions. It was very like, well, the mafia, the Italian mafia was modeled after it.
Yeah.
And you didn't need to legislate everything down to the minute fucking details with the Roman Senate. They just told people to do things, and on his authority, they would do it. Because he was a great and honorable man. It was very much an honor society. And then there was in Rome, there was the equestrian class and the patrician class, which was like the noble class and the warrior class. So you could use all these class divisions to help the fucking empire grow. Because they all had their own ambitions. And this isn't quite as advanced as that. But it's as big as that. Very much big,
it's like it's fucking massive.
Right. Yeah, had it had enough time, it probably would have turned into something kind of like the Roman Empire. Because you had to have a little bit more order. Things have to be written down. These dudes don't sound very literate.
They weren't largely. Yeah. One of the things, because the thing about it is like the logistics of running an empire this large in this era were kind of blowing my mind a little bit. They said basically all that Genghis would do was he'd roll into a place, he'd kill everybody, he'd take over, and he would just install like a handful of like trusted Mongols to like run the shit, like run the city.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine like in the outposts of the empire, it wasn't like super organized.
Yeah.
Like, they did have some kind of rudimentary organization, I would imagine, and it did run for a while, but in this area, I mean, even nowadays, it's hard to run anything that large, so I can imagine, like, back in those days, it would have been, like, well nigh impossible.
Right. We had to rule things by fear.
I mean, that was pretty much the only choice that you had. Like, you had to be like, well, you had to like constantly live in fear of like somebody's going to show up and like cut your head off, or you know, or something, or you're not going to behave. Because it's like, because you're like, look, they're not here. They can't watch me. I can do whatever I want.
We take civic order and obedience for granted because we have a criminal justice system, police forces, constitutions, and laws. These people didn't have that.
No, they didn't have any of that stuff.
So you could say, like, well, you know what, fuck it, dude, I'm going to do that. And then a cop isn't going to show up. You're not going to end up going
Yeah, it's like, look, I'm out in the middle of fucking nowhere. No one's even going to see anything.
Exactly. It was a very different world. So you obeyed through fear. Well, if I don't listen to the Khan, man, fucking my whole
He's
family...
He's going to fucking appear. He's magical.
He'll kill my whole fucking family.
It might be, yeah. It was probably that. Like, you had to do that because, like I said, there was really no other way.
Right. So
because, like you said, the cops aren't going to show up.
That's what I'm going to say. He was a good dude for his time. Because that's the way the rules were.
He was an effective dude for his time.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't know. Yeah, he did a lot of fucked up shit, but a lot of people back then did fucked up shit.
Yeah.
I don't think he was any different in that regard.
Well, I'm sure
he probably killed a lot more people, but I think that was more an efficiency issue than I want to kill that many.
Well, I think he was
because look at fucking Vlad the Impaler. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he did really fucked up shit too.
I think he was probably like Darius the Great. You know, where you got to fuck people up. You know, kings that run these city-states, but you're trying to make an empire, and if they come with you, it's going to be great. You know what I mean? You're going to have fucking legal codes, and everything's going to be, you know, it's going to be civilized. He's doing that. What happened with, like, you know, fucking, well, not so much Darius the Great, his son. What was his son's name? Fucking Xerxes. Xerxes, yeah. Not the same, it's actually the same Xerxes from 300. He's kind of miscast in that. Xerxes was actually a great man and very, very modern. He had all kinds of legal codes that if you joined him up, you'd get protections and your own ways, or multiculturalism. He had that each city had its own culture, its own religions. He just wanted to make sure that you paid for your protection, and you'd have this big, like a federal army, and you could just ride as normal. You could be, you know... But, you know, people would kind of have the beginnings of rights, you know. You can't bring that concept in by being a nice guy in the ancient world. The idea of rights. You had to kick some people's asses because the world was ruled by fucking despots.
Well, it wasn't really a thing. Like I don't think most people had that concept.
No, they didn't have that concept. No.
Of like that each individual had rights.
Yeah, that you had some protections, you know what I mean?
Like, I don't even think most people thought that way.
Even the Romans didn't really have that unless you were at least a citizen. And then you had above that, you had patricians and equestrians, and then you had the Senate. And as you went up and up, you had more rights and more authoritas over telling people what to do. But none of this shit was based on a constitution. It was just based on whim and honor, which didn't always work out. Especially when you have people vying for power.
Yeah.
You know, where you could commit a murder as long as it was in your own family. You know,
it's like, hey, we're not getting involved in that.
Yeah,
that's you guys' business.
And you could commit a murder as long as it was in a family of lesser rank than yours. There was, it was very, very.
Yeah,
much
that's crazy to me. Like in this day and age, like to think that back in the day, like if you had servants and stuff, like you could just kill them and nobody was going to do anything to you.
Yeah.
Well, that's just how that happens.
Yeah,
you got to kill them sometimes.
Based on my judgment. They were bad.
Yeah, they fucked up.
Yeah, well, they had power of life and death over people.
Yeah, which is
but
fucking
there's
scary.
There's a lot of the world that's like that.
No, I know. It's that's fucking
like
scary.
That today. Yeah.
That's fucking scary.
Yeah.
So let me tell one more fucked up story, and then we'll talk about how he died and stuff like that, and then we'll try to wrap this up. I knew this was going to be a fucking... I tried to, like, keep the notes down, and I skipped a bunch of stuff, too. Because it's like, I kept winnowing it down, and I'm like, God, this is so long. And then it was just kind of like, but all this stuff is, like, it's so interesting, though. But, I knew it was going to be, like, super long. But what are you going to do? But, yeah. So, okay. So here's this one kind of story which I wanted to include because... it's gory, and I like that. So this evidently, reportedly, happened in the city of Termez, which is in modern day the south of Uzbekistan. So it supposedly happened in 1220. Now, Genghis and his army are going toward the city of Termez, like to take it over. Now, as they usually did, they gave the people of the town, or I guess the officials of the town, they wouldn't ask the people, because who the fuck cares what the people think, right? So they're going to ask the officials, it's like, hey, like, surrender to us and none of you will get hurt. Now, the officials and or people of Termez apparently thought that their walls and fortifications were super badass, and they're just like, nah, we're not going to do it. We're not surrendering. Like, you can't get in here. Fuck off. They were like that. So the Mongols were like, okay, well, I'm sorry you said that, but now, again, it's on. So, as they had done in a couple of cities before, Genghis told his soldiers, get hold of every single fucking person in here, man, woman, child, count them all, and we're going to portion them out to, like, each one of the soldiers. And then they fucking killed every single one of them. Now, at the end of the massacre, one woman, so the story goes, was seen running away. Like she escaped. So they caught her. When they caught her, she says, don't kill me because I had a bunch of pearls and I swallowed them. And if you let me live, I'll give them to you.
Okay, yeah, she'll shit them out.
Right?
Yeah.
As you might have imagined, because these are Mongols,
They laughed.
they just said, oh, you've got pearls in your stomach? Okay, so they just killed her and disemboweled her.
Yeah.
Turned out, she was telling the truth. There
Yeah.
were a bunch of pearls in there.
Yeah.
And that gave Genghis the idea. He's like, maybe a bunch of them did that. Go disembowel all those people.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
they all have pearls in there. But she did have pearls in there. So yeah, don't tell a bunch of Mongols that you have pearls in your stomach.
Yeah.
To let you live, because they'll just like fucking saw your ass. They'll just be
Yeah.
like, shoop.
Yeah.
We don't need you alive. We just need your
misjudged-
stomach.
She misjudged that. She had normalcy bias.
She's like, she didn't think they were crazy. It's like, look, it's like, look, I'll give them to you if you like let me go. And they're just like, nah, we don't.
We'll just take them right now.
We'll just take them right out of you.
Yeah.
You told us where they were. Like,
Yeah.
why do we need you alive? So, okay, so all of this campaigning going on, like pretty much, like Genghis Khan, like I feel like from the time he was made a Khan in 1206, from the time of his death to 1227, it was pretty much just constant conquering and battling, like pretty much that whole time. Now, you would think that somebody like Genghis fucking Khan would die in some like auspicious, awesome kind of way, like badass kind of way, like I don't know, shark with laser on its head or something. I don't know. But it wasn't really like that. At least according to... Okay, so I've seen two different things. The most common story is that while he was hunting over the winter of 1226, 1227, he fell off his horse or was thrown from his horse. And apparently had some internal injuries. And over a course of months, like he got sicker and sicker and eventually died. Now, there are other reports that think that he might have died of the bubonic plague. And there are a couple of historians out there that think that the Mongols might have actually spread the bubonic plague to Europe. I don't really know what the evidence for that is, but that is like a theory that's out there. Not sure.
Hard to prove that.
Yeah, it's kind of... Well, that's why it's kind of still a theory, because everybody's like, look, we can't really prove it, but it's like, the timeline's kind of match up.
The pearl story that you just told?
Yeah.
That's a cool story, but I think it's bullshit.
Probably, but like I said, a lot of stuff about it was probably bullshit.
What are the chances of that woman speaking the same language as the fucking soldiers that captured her? You know what I mean? She probably spoke a totally different language. They just would have fucking grabbed her and killed her.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, because they wouldn't speak the same language.
Although, like I said, it's a good story, though.
It's a good story, though.
They're
just trying to say
hey, there's pearls in my stomach. They're like, really?
Yeah. They're just trying to tell you how ruthless the fucking Mongols were.
Yeah, probably. So, like I said, the most common story was that Genghis fell off a horse while he was hunting and had internal injuries, and he just got sicker and sicker. Now, at the time that this happened, him and his soldiers were in the midst of a siege against the Jia people at the time. And so he insisted to the Jia, like, look, I'm not feeling too good. Fell off my horse. But keep that shit up. You know what I mean? He told him to keep going. Now, he ended up dying on either August 18th or August 25th of 1227. They kept his death a secret. And actually, the the main city that they were doing a siege on actually fell to the Mongols a month after he died. And that civilization, the Jia civilization, again, was pretty much completely annihilated. So there's that. So that's yet another civilization that the Mongols wiped out. Now, after his death, he was taken back to Mongolia and buried in a spot near a mountain, a sacred mountain that he had chosen, a site that he had chosen before. Story goes that because of grave robbers and whatnot, the people who buried him, they put him in his thing with like all the wealth and sacrificed some servants, or like threw some servants in there or whatever. And then they put him in there, and then they covered it up with dirt, and then they ran a bunch of horses over the dirt so that no one would know that the burial site was there. Because to this day, nobody knows where Genghis Khan is buried. So there's that. Now, when his son, Ogadai, ascended to the throne, and actually, Genghis Khan was very, very careful in selecting, because he had several sons, in selecting Ogadai to succeed him. And indeed, Ogadai did do a good job. Like I said, the empire was at its largest, like under him. But he actually had he ascended to the throne in 1229, and they kind of had this big thing where they honored his grave. So they still knew where it was at that time. They had 3 days of offerings and sacrificed 30 women. So that's nice. So. You know, as you do.
Yeah, they get the hottest ones they could find. Look, we gotta go. We gotta sacrifice the people. God's gonna be happy.
Yep, I guess so.
There it goes. Now the dude's crying. God damn that asshole! That she was perfect.
Why'd
she
you
was
kill
perfect.
such? Yeah. Sorry, I just thought of a line from.
Booty was amazing.
I just thought of that line from Heathers. Why'd you kill such hot snatch?
Yeah,
but,
yeah. I think that's what the thinking was. Yeah, that's why they did it.
That's why I thought that line from Heathers was so funny.
Make the sacrifice mean something.
Tammy said also rumored they killed the men that buried him. Yes, I've heard that also. Because they didn't want anybody to know. So in the aggregate, I kind of feel like, to this day, Genghis Khan is considered, probably, understandably, like a national hero in Mongolia, considered the father of Mongolian culture. Which, like I said, you can kind of see because he did make a lot of innovations for the time. He opened east up to west. It's like, he presided over the largest empire to ever exist. And he did do some good shit, but on the other hand, he killed a lot of people. He killed a lot of people. At least 37 million people. At least. And probably more than that. Not just him. It wasn't just him, but his armies did that. So I kind of feel like it's interesting because I watched a bunch of different documentaries about him and stuff like that. And I like that most of the documentaries and most of the stuff about him are pretty even-handed. They're like, look, he did this good shit, but also he did this real fucked up shit. Like he was a complicated person.
Because it was a long time ago.
He was a complicated
The feelings
person.
Aren't there anymore. So
yeah, it's easier with hindsight to be like, and look, I get
they're not going to do this with Mustache Man.
Well, not enough time has passed.
Not enough time has passed. 200 years
now
from
I
now,
have
they're going to
seen.
be like, well,
I have seen some comedians make jokes about what about all the good shit that he did and stuff like that. Like,
that's
you know
what
I
they
mean?
would do 200 years from now.
But like I said, I remember like years back, I saw like a T-shirt like on one of those kind of controversial punk rock T-shirts that said, "What about all the good Hitler?" Where it's like, yeah, you'd probably get your ass beat if you wore that. But it's kind of funny though, like in a fucked up dark kind of way.
That's how history works. That's how people work.
But the thing about it is, well, that's kind of the hell of it, isn't it? That it's like every single person, because we talk about horrible people all the time, like serial killers and stuff. No matter how horrible the person, most people, not everybody, most people do have at least one redeeming quality somewhere. Yeah. And you just kind of have to accept that. It's like people aren't just all bad or all good.
Yeah. Well,
with very few exceptions.
Here's an example. Hannibal. All right. Hannibal's almost like, he's almost like heroic. But to the ancient Romans, Hannibal was like Hitler.
Yeah.
They were fucking terrified of him. They were afraid he'd come back after his death.
Well, the same thing with Genghis Khan. It's like in Mongolia, he's seen as like a hero. He's like the father of the country, of their culture. But it's like all the you know, all the countries that he conquered don't really have much of a charitable view of him. And like, understandably so.
And Roman Christians saw Nero Caesar as like the devil.
Yeah.
You know? He was kind of a fucked up emperor and made you listen to his music and shit. He thought he was a great actor. You know?
Can you imagine how fucking insufferable that would have been?
He was mostly a clown.
Yeah.
Yeah, compared to
it's like, dude, shut up.
Yeah, compared to Hitler, he was a clown. He had a bunch of people killed, but he was still just a fucking clown. But to an ancient Roman, he was like Hitler.
Yeah.
You know, so what a normal person would think of Hitler today. It all kind of in time fades.
Well, and like I said, it's easy for us to talk about it now because like all those people have been dead for centuries, and it's like, you know, no one's going to get mad.
And what they were fighting over is long gone, and
yeah.
Yeah.
Everything fades with time.
Yeah.
But like I said, it just goes to show that whether he's portrayed as a hero or a monster, it's like people can be both of those things.
Yeah. Depends on your perspective.
And, you know, people can have good and bad in them. They can do good things and bad things.
Yep.
Like, you know, so it's not, like I said, it's not white hat, black hat kind of shit. It's not that black and white, which is uncomfortable, I guess, but that's just kind of the way shit works. Yeah. All right, look, he's rubbing his tummy.
Oh, man, I'm fucking messed up. I need some food.
Well, he's rubbing his tummy. It's like,
I need some food. I need some Tums, man.
Feed me. All right, so I guess we got to go to Circle K. All right, so we're going to go down and get something to eat. Yeah. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. I know it was kind of all over the place, but I tried to kind of, like I said, I had to cut out so much stuff.
I thought it was a fun show.
Yeah, okay. I thought I did okay, but like I said, there's so much information that I was just kind of like overwhelmed. So I did cut a lot of stuff out, but I tried to keep like all the interesting shit in there. So, all right. So like I said, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you guys have a good rest of your evening and you have a good day tomorrow. We'll be back on Friday night as usual for our fun ass sidetrack show where we just get drunk and talk about a bunch of bullshit with no topic in mind. So hopefully you guys can join us for that. Thank you for hanging out with us this evening. Thank you for your super chats and your company. And we will see you guys again on Friday night. Good night.